Yes.
The lead Strait Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1542 of the War News stream. And tonight we have more big news yet again. We are hearing tonight that apparently Russia's begun the process of evacuating their forces near Iran, as it does appear that the U.S. is about to resume strikes on Iran at some point in the immediate future. We're also seeing that Zelensky has warned today that Belarus is apparently set to attack Ukraine soon, and also apparently Russia is going to start launching attacks from Belarus on Ukraine. Also, by the way, apparently Moscow and Russia as a whole is under a major drone attack that's happening right this very minute, and we have a lot of news, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of major breaking news from around the world, as it does appear that the war against the Islamic Republic of Iran will be beginning soon at some point here within the near future, as the President of the United States of America has made it clear that they view the continuation of the war to be an absolute imperative and a necessity at this point, and strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran will resume at some point in the near future. As a result of these statements, the Russian Federation's Ministry of Emergency Services have been conducting Il-76 Aleutian flights to some areas surrounding the Middle East and Iran, evacuating Russian personnel, contractors, and also Russian governmental officials from the area and returning them back to the Russian Federation for the preparations of this war. At the moment, it is unclear as to when this conflict will begin, but it does appear that it could begin at any moment at this point. The Islamic Republic of Iran has also conducted its own drone strikes against Kurdish HQs around the city of Erbil today, while at the same time, Iranian state television is now showing how to field strip and operate AKs on national television, as we are now believing that the IRGC and the besieged may be attempting to arm the citizenry of the Islamic Republic of Iran in the event of some sort of a ground invasion by the United States of America or Kurdish forces from northern Iraq. In the midst of this, Hezbollah forces have continued their fire against the state of Israel, as we have seen significant rocket barrages into the northern part of their country, north of the port of Haifa, over the course of this day. We've additionally been able to see that the President of the United States has announced that in the midst of the ongoing war between Israel and Hezbollah inside of Lebanon, apparently the ceasefire has now been extended another 45 days, although it's actively being broken even at this moment right now. We have also been able to hear of other interesting developments as well within the area of Abu Dhabi, as it does appear that the UAE is racing to build a pipeline to the area of Al Fujairah, and we've also been able to hear of significant information that the UAE is now venting oil into the Persian Gulf to be able to try and ensure that there is some available space left for them to make sure that they're not having to close their wellheads and see them disappear to the annals of history once they're closed. We've also seen some U.S. air activity over the course of the day, including E-3 AWACS, once again near to the Persian Gulf, most likely coordinating air operations in support of the U.S. blockade that's currently being conducted near to the Gulf of Oman. Additionally, we've also been able to get further news out of the Russian Federation, as the Ukrainian armed forces have been conducting a significant drone attack against the Russians over the course of this past day. Significant strikes have been reported around the area of Stavropol Krai and Rostov, as we have seen a fuel refinery get hit within the area of Rostov, a chemical plant getting hit around the city of Stavropol, and we've also seen that air raid sirens have sounded in Voronezh. In the midst of this all, the Russians apparently blitzed one of their own apartment buildings in Ryazan by hitting it with an S-400 air defense missile, which was seen on film. And the Moscow area has once again come under drone alerts over the course of the day. We have also been able to report simultaneously that a major Ukrainian strike was conducted at Kupisk. And we have also been able to hear that as a result of that strike, a Russian corvette has been so heavily damaged that the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense is reporting it as an active kill. It is the corvette Bulyan, which appears to have been directly hit at its mooring at Kupisk and has taken enough damage that it may not be longer operational or serviceable for the Russian Navy's flotilla within the Caspian Sea. Outside of all of this news, the Ukrainian armed forces have also liberated the town of Dobropilya today on the Severonsky forest front near to the town of Liman, and we've also been able to see that the Ukrainian armed forces have been inflicting wildly high casualties against the Russian Federation over the course of this day, and have also been ensuring that the Russians are not only not gaining any ground, but they are actively losing ground as of this moment. We've also been able to get reports from Kyiv that Ukrainian intelligence is beginning to show that the Russians are preparing to strike government facilities and buildings throughout the city of Kyiv, and it also appears that additional Ukrainian intelligence is showing that there is a growing possibility of Belarus attempting to join the conflict and support the Russian Federation by opening a front on the northern side of the state of Ukraine. We've also been able to get bombshell news that the Polish government and the Republic of Poland has been blindsided by the abrupt announcement of the stoppage of deployments of U.S. forces as a part of the Atlantic Resolve Rotational Division operated by the 5th Corps based out of Poznan, Poland, and the larger part of that brigade being based around the area of Bolesławiec, which is a town within southwestern Poland. It appears that the Polish government is considering this to be of a high concern and is once again showing the wavering commitment of the United States of America to the larger NATO alliance. We've also been able to hear additionally that within the area of the United Kingdom is currently operating on training for the armed forces of Ukraine and their air force to be able to help them out with their combat efficiency, and we've also been able to see that bond markets are seeing a surge at this moment around the world as they are preparing for the upcoming financial recession that now appears to be inevitable due to the blockade and the Strait of Hormuz. We've also been able to get major news out of the U.S. government today that it now does appear that they are considering an abandonment of Taiwan, as we're now hearing that a $14 billion arms deal that was agreed to with the Taiwanese is now being held up by the President of the United States, and I quote, "China a big country, Taiwan very small, and for this reason, Taiwan be very weak." And we'll be getting into that later on in the stream. But of course, we are going to be making sure to cover all of this news, starting with our largest stories first, and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. And suffice it to say, we have nothing but absolutely massive news to cover once again over the course of this past 24 hours. And so, moving us on and directly into this major news that we have over the course of the day, we have been able to hear that the United States of America is making it clear once again that they believe that a war is imminent at this moment against the Islamic Republic of Iran once more. Currently, we have seen that the situation with the Islamic Republic of Iran over the last month and 2 weeks has largely remained unchanged, and the Islamic Republic of Iran is still making maximalist demands at this moment, even including recently, where we were able to hear that the U.S. had to reject all of Iran's conditions because they had sent their own terms to the United States, which are once again maximalist in Iran's aims.
Also, notice that, by the way, they just formally rejected Iran's counterproposal just today after the U.S. president officially got back from Beijing. They just decided to formally reject it. So that's a very interesting timing with that right there. It almost seems like our analysis was on point.
It does appear so. It certainly does appear that the U.S. was waiting for this talk with the Chinese to end before they started to get the ball rolling with the Islamic Republic of Iran. But to read y'all exactly what Al Jazeera has reported today, Tehran has formally received Washington's response to its proposal, and the U.S. has rejected all of Iran's conditions. The Iranians, before the president had gone to China, had actually issued a list of their own terms to the United States of America, which we were never told publicly by the U.S. government what exactly the Iranians were asking for, but the Iranians were more than happy to tell the entire world what they were asking for, which was unconditional surrender by the United States. Largely the withdrawal of most of our forces from the region, the de facto recognition of the Strait of Hormuz being Iran's and Iran's only, and also the United States would have to give up all of its ambitions on stopping Iran's nuclear weapons program. Iran would be able to do whatever they want with nuclear technology and nuclear weaponry. They would also have to be paid reparations by the United States of America, meaning that the U.S., out of our tax dollars, would have to just start paying lump sums to Iran for some point into the future. And not only that, they were also demanding that all of their financial assets that have been frozen for decades in some instances would be unfrozen and allowed to be returned back to Iran's personal control. So from what we understand, those terms, as we said in the past, were entirely unacceptable for the United States of America and are certainly not good for our long-term strategic outlook, and it's also showing us that the Iranians find their position to be quite confident. To give you all an idea of why the Iranians do believe that their position is confident, although we could beat them conventionally over the skies of Iran and on the ground in Iran, the current reason why they are confident in their position is because of their ongoing blockade within the Strait of Hormuz. We have stated this time and time again throughout the entirety of this year since January, but as long as the Iranians are able to control the Strait of Hormuz, any of the direct military damage that they are caused by the United States Armed Forces is largely mitigated, at least in the larger strategic outlook, by the amount of economic damage that they're causing to the United States and our allies, which is largely leveling the playing field or even starting to eke it out towards Iran's favor rather than ours. And that's why at the moment right now, the Iranians are still comfortable with making these kinds of maximalist demands. If they were truly in an unrecoverable situation to where the Islamic Republic of Iran either did not have a military, did not have any way to exert control, didn't have any diplomatic, strategic, or military hand, any economic hand, or any operational government, operational armed forces, and so on, the Iranians would be a lot more apt to negotiate and actually make a deal with the United States, and in the process of doing so, make significant compromises to make the percentage likelihood of a deal happening a lot larger. However, due to their current situation, they do find it comfortable enough that the war could resume and the United States could continue to bombard the Iranians, and the Iranians would be fine with that because they still would be able to exert, at least according by their own calculations, absolute control over the Strait and continue their blockade, which is quite literally the feather in their cap for the larger part and the only thing that gives them any significant leverage at this point in the conflict. This is why we're starting to hear that the President of the United States is also stating that it's going to be somewhat important to get back to fighting the war, as many people would know, as this is quite obvious at this point. U.S. and Israeli defense officials are actively engaged in intense preparations and formulating target banks for the possible resumption of combat actions against Iran as early as next week, according to some sources who spoke to CNN. We've also been able to hear that the president added, and while I won't be able to show that clip, that he has no doubt that the Iranians will eventually capitulate. And he also stated, I'm going to do what's right, I have to do what's right, the Strait will be opened, and they will not have a nuclear weapon, and the world will go on. So this is largely showing us that at the moment there is significant consideration, even publicly, that the war must resume. There are two possibilities as to this statement. Either there is no intention on continuing the war with Iran, and these statements are being made as some sort of an attempt at diplomatic leverage, which will most likely fall short, as many a grander threat have been made by the president over the past month and 2 weeks, and we have not seen any of those coalesce in enough pressure on the Iranians to make them concede on anything. This means that the only other option, which is the higher likely option, is that there is a serious consideration to get back to the war. And I hate to say it, folks, because I know that many people generally are not of the concept that war is good, but war is sometimes necessary, and with the current situation that we find ourselves in with the Islamic Republic of Iran, a resumption of the war would be a necessity at this point just to be able to try and return the situation back to the way it was before the war started. Right now, the Iranians are blockading the Strait, which is quite literally the only thing and the most important thing that has changed ever since the beginning of the conflict. And that strait must be reopened, hell or high water. If it is not reopened, many of y'all personally are going to start feeling and are already feeling the economic effects and fallout of what's happening because of Iran's closure of the strait. So the U.S. must have that reopened, and it must be done as soon as possible. And I do have to say,
Yeah, I think they'll definitely have to get back to it eventually. Because if you look at the oil price right now, like for example, WTI crude, which is the main one that we focus on in America, from the sounds of it, it's currently sitting just shy of $106 a barrel right now. And of course, we're going into the weekend right now, so it's sitting at 106. And I would imagine the longer the strait stays closed, the higher that number is going to get. That's just basic economics right there. So the number is climbing back up. So I mean, unless they do military action or unless Iran capitulates, which so far they have not capitulated, and honestly I really don't think Iran is going to capitulate. That would be going against the grain for the Iranian regime. They are extremists, and I mean, even before the war started, they knew action was imminent before the war started, and they still acted goofy, and which led to the conflict starting in the first place. So I think it's probably imminent. It's just a matter of time. Now that the Beijing meeting's over, it could happen at any time.
it could really happen at any time. That's actually definitely the case, because we do understand that right now there is a significant amount of U.S. forces in the area, and we do not know how long at this point war plans have now been recalculated, retabulated, and made to be able to deal with the current situation as we see it right now and try and deal with the current dilemmas that we're still seeing at this moment around the area. I will say this, though, off of the first part or the first phase of the armed conflict, I think we can all get a pretty decent understanding of what we do not need to bomb the next time around. And that would, number one, be the Iranian government. I think it's pretty clear at this point that we can throw 80 tomahawks at another Khamenei again, like Mujtaba, and it's not really going to do us much of anything. If we end up killing Mujtaba in a second round of strikes, it's going to end up a lot like Ali Khamenei. He's just going to be called a martyr, and they're going to elect some new leader, or the actual IRGC council that's legitimately running the country at this point is just going to continue to run the show, meaning that the waste of ordnance on targets like those is completely pointless. Also, hitting any kind of critical infrastructure targets would be woefully pointless as well, as they are not going to be changing any of the leverage that the Iranians have on us right now. Right now, our war needs to be a counteroffensive once it opens, in theory, to be able to try and deal with the leverage that Iran has on us right now. And the only leverage that they have on us is in the Strait of Hormuz. So hopefully when we see that the war restarts again here soon, most military actions will be directed at the actual threats that are posed within the Strait of Hormuz. This would include all of the fast attack boats, all of the drone forces and anti-ship missile forces, all of the coastal defense forces, any of the forces around the areas of Qashem Island, the Rock, or Hormuz Island, which are within the Strait of Hormuz, any of the smaller islands, including Syria to the west, and also making sure that if there is any ability for the Iranians to fire, which there always will be, at shipping within the region, it is so far inland that the response time will be large enough and long enough that a U.S. warship would be able to deal with those threats easily, and we would also be able to see that a shipping corridor has been created that is not filled with mines at the moment for larger commercial vessels like VLCCs to be able to get through with the escort of U.S. destroyers helping them out along that way. That would generally be the greatest war plan that we could see at the moment, because once we remove Iran's leverage in the entirety of the conflict, that means that the war is well within our favor at that point. Economically, in that situation, we can persist for as long as we would like, and we can actually keep our blockade going at the entrance of the Gulf of Oman with absolutely no pressure, meaning that the U.S. is not economically suffering worse with each passing month. The economic suffering will largely flatten out about where it is right now, and that means that the Iranians will be the only ones who are economically suffering in the long term. The United States can clearly win in a spending game against the Iranians as well, as we have a far larger economy, and therefore a great deal of financial resources and material resources throughout this conflict, meaning that once...
I don't know. I don't know if we have like a big piggy bank, but we have a nice line of credit here in the United States. It's called being able to print the stuff out of thin air. So we have a line of credit. I'm not sure if we have the cash, but I mean, sometimes, a credit card does wonders.
Well, I mean, spending wise, we're going to be outspending them. So I mean, like that's generally how that works. But outspending them for sure, and able to keep the conflict going as a war of attrition at that point until the Iranians eventually tap out, which is where they would have to then meet us at our demands, or else they would start to economically implode. A lot like the Russians are finding themselves in right now in the war in Ukraine. But we have to be able to turn all of the leverage around, where Iran isn't holding the leverage, the U.S. is holding the leverage, and at that point, it would be only a matter of time before they collapse or lose. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we've also been able to hear some other news within the Strait of Hormuz as well. We have been able to hear that, according to the president today, he did state that he's okay with Iran suspending nuclear programs for 20 years, but that has to be a real commitment. So it appears that there's now some consideration for the JCPOA to come back around. We've also been able to hear additionally that, according to the New York Times, some of the president's advisors have prepared plans in case fighting with Iran resumes, including more aggressive strikes on military infrastructure and facilities. Another option discussed involves deploying ground forces to secure Iran's enriched uranium stockpile, with hundreds of U.S. Special Forces troops having arrived in the region in March for such a scenario. We actually saw that down at Diego Garcia with the MV Ocean Traders' arrival, and also the arrival of some other forces within CENTCOM's area of responsibility within the actual theater. Officials also discussed the possibility of seizing Karg Island, though the U.S. military would require additional forces for an operation of that scale. So we do generally understand that, at least at this moment, that it does appear that the U.S. is considering a wide variety of military options, but I would hope that these are not the only three on the table, because, unfortunately, none of these three actually deal with directly reopening the Strait of Hormuz. It is all, once again, at least from what we're hearing right now in the reports from some insiders that are privy to the matter, they're all, once again, the whole gymnastics and six-dimensional hoops, hurdles, and chess games to eventually try and get the Strait of Hormuz reopened, instead of just directly dealing with the problem and reopening it that way. I would promise y'all that any sort of a sustained air and naval campaign against the Strait of Hormuz, possibly even an amphibious one, would certainly clear out the area. And at this point, that's the only chance that we have, at least at this moment, to be able to push forward and see some level of success right now with the current situation that we're in. And we've also been able to hear, lastly, is some news that has come out of the Strait today, that it does appear that the Iranians are continuing to make it clear that they are going to be controlling the Strait, and that they are more than willing to fight it out to try and control the Strait and the larger part of the Islamic Republic of Iran as well. On national television today, they actually had a special broadcast that was showing citizens at large how to be able to field strip, operate, and fire an AKM-style semi-automatic, well, not semi-automatic, sorry everyone, I'm used to U.S. gun law talk, but an assault rifle is what they call that for the large part, an AKM style or something similar to it. I'm sure it's the Iranian variant that's license built with some weird name like the Fajr 9 or something like that, but nevertheless, it does appear that they're trying to get the public ready at some point to be able to get to fighting. I also got to say that while this guy is not afraid of facing death, apparently, at least that's the image that they're presenting, he's apparently afraid of getting the common cold or the hantavirus as he's wearing a mask. Seems kind of odd to me, you know. I thought that he was, you know, more than willing to face down death. Apparently, sniffles, though, is a little bit too much for him. But outside of that,
Sure. I'm not sure, man. You're going fast tonight, but I'm not sure why they're like trying to train the Iranians how to use guns. Because first of all, they don't have them. That's the problem number one, and also number two, it's like, is the Iranian regime really going to hand out AKs to the public? Because that would basically be arming the opposition to a large degree. Because I'm sure a lot of those weapons that they would hand out to the civilians to, you know, allegedly defend Iran, those would end up being used probably against the regime themselves. That right now is the main problem. Why the Iranian opposition can't take over the government is because they don't have weapons for the most part.
yeah, I would have to definitely agree. It is a little bit weird, but I'm guessing that at some point, as long as they can find individuals that seem to be loyal to the IRGC or loyal to the Islamic regime, they might be handing out weapons to them to create some form of armed citizenry, because the Ukrainian armed forces did something very similar during the invasion of Ukraine in 2022, and just generally started to hand out rifles to the citizenry at large, just to be able to see that they could arm them and possibly create a little bit further resistance, and also weaken Russians' resolve, at at least in their offensive plans, in advancing into new territory. So that might be the reason why we're seeing this. But also, folks, we have gotten no corroboration that this state televised broadcast today was followed with any sort of mass issuance of rifles and small arms to the general population. So we haven't really seen that
It
at the
seems
moment.
It seems like if the Iranian loyalists had the AK-47s handed out to them like freebies, it's like, oh, comrade, defend the country. It's like there's got to be a price. So it's like there's got to be a price that they'll sell that weapon to an opposition person because everybody in Iran's hungry for cash. They're also hungry for food and also thirsty for water too. So there's got to be a price somewhere out there. And also, by the way, we have not gotten an update about the whole situation when giving the Kurds weapons again to get those back into Iran because the first time the Kurds allegedly finessed the weapons off the United States when we tried to pass them to the Kurds to give to the Iranian opposition. I think they're giving it a round 2 try, and we haven't gotten an update on that either. So hopefully the Kurds didn't finesse the U.S. a second time.
Hopefully they didn't. But man, what's kind of crazy, man, is that they're saying, at least at the moment on TV, that they would be handing out free AKs to anybody who gets in line. Does anybody know where that line is, by the way? Because I'm not saying, that I'm loyal to the Islamic regime, but I mean, if they're handing out a free AK, I mean, who wouldn't want a free AK? You know what I mean?
Man, I'll buy my own AK. I'll buy my own AK, and they can piss off with that IRGC bullcrap.
Let me go see here really quickly. What type of AKs do they have in Iran? Because I'm sure they have their own version. Oh yeah, it looks like they mostly have like Norinco stuff. So, also, here's a picture of one of the IRGC members handling his AK right here, very properly.
At least the looks like the receiver, the upper part's taken off of it, so that still doesn't excuse this. But I mean, geez.
Well, the mag's out, the bolt's out, and the dust cover's out. So, I mean, it's not like anything could happen here. It's not even like you could chamber a bullet and fire it. But I mean, that's a pretty damn good picture, right? Like that's a fairly comical one. But yeah, here's some of the rifles that have been seized prior that were being shipped to Iran. Mostly AKS-74s. And that was it. I mean, at least in that picture, it was just AKS-74s. So generally, it's just Norinco-style AKs, the ones that are license built from the original Soviet and Russian designs that are still being produced up there in Russia. So outside of that, a lot of people are talking about this entire image that's coming out of the region right now, because there's also something interesting that we do have to point out. Russian Ministry of Emergency Services aircraft have been spotted today around the area, and we actually did see one land in Mogadishu in Somalia and apparently evacuate some Russian personnel out of the area. Considering that Somali pirates are starting to become a reoccurring trend, there is a possibility that once hostilities resume, not only will they resume against the Islamic Republic of Iran and its IRGC forces, but they may resume against the Houthis and the Somali pirates as well, generally attempting to combat and destroy any hostilities within the area. The fact that this Russian Ministry for Emergency Services aircraft visibly flew to Mogadishu and out today, evacuating Russian personnel, are giving some people an indication that the Russians must be having an assumption that something's about to be going on here in the near future. And also, on top of that, it appears to have landed within the UAE as well, possibly showing that it was making a second stop to pick up even more Russian personnel, citizens, and officials that might have been in the UAE during this moment in time. So this thing is basically the local bus route, going around picking up any Russian that needs to leave and then bringing them back to Russia. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this news right now, and also the vow by the U.S. administration to continue eventual strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran? Are they thinking that war is soon, and if they do, how soon? Or are they thinking that war is not going to be happening anytime soon at all? And what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so I was joking with Andrew before we started the stream tonight. I feel like we're back in the situation where we're like, oh, war is imminent, war is imminent. I feel like we're saying that every day at this point. We went through this with Venezuela, by the way, as well. Like for like a solid month and a half, we were waiting for that to kick off. And it felt like we were repeating like Groundhog Day every single day. But eventually it did kick off. And the same thing's going to happen here in Iran. It's simply a matter of time at this point. But usually when you see the Russians show up in the region to start getting people out, that's usually a pretty strong sign that something is coming, and the Russians have caught wind either directly or indirectly that the fighting is about to restart, because we've seen not just this one right here, but also several Russian emergency services aircraft going to the region, and they appear to be getting their people out left and right, which is exactly what we saw the last time the U.S. started attacking Iran. So it follows a pretty predictable pattern, to say the least. So what are your thoughts about these Russian aircraft showing up to get their people out? 63% said strikes are going to start sometime this weekend, while 23% said strikes are going to start sometime this month before the end of May in about 15 days, and 6% said there will be probably strikes somewhere in the next 6 months or so. And just to put this as plainly as possible, the U.S. cannot deal with 6 months of the Strait of Hormuz being closed. So that option is off the table. It'll definitely be a lot sooner than 6 months. By the time 6 months rolls around, we'll have $200 oil. So we definitely got to restart attacks before then. So I'm going to say sometime this month. That's the safe option. Of course, right now it's May the 15th, and we have another 15 or 16 days before the month is out. And it will happen, in my opinion, sometime in that range. I'm not ready to say that it'll happen this weekend because, we're just coming right off the heels of the Beijing meeting, and that's still, kind of like a high for U.S. officials. So they might want to ride that high out a little bit more before they start the attacks. That sounds like possibly their line of thinking. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that strikes are probably going to be happening at some point in the future, but when, I wouldn't be able to tell y'all because we went through this very similar thing with Venezuela a good while ago where we sat around for 3 months saying it's definitely got to be happening soon. It's happening very soon. And then 3 months went by and then it finally happened. And the problem with that was that all the forces were there and ready to start strikes all the way back in basically October, but then they didn't conduct strikes all the way until the very first days of January to actually be able to raid the country and take Maduro. So at the current situation right now, U.S. forces are ready and well and truly capable today of starting strikes in the Islamic Republic of Iran. But the problem is that we have to be able to try and call exactly when the civilian administration becomes comfortable and makes that decision to conduct strikes. And currently, that is trying to basically make a lottery-style guess with lottery-style odds, because there's really no way to get that down accurately to say this is exactly when they would make that decision. Because forces could be in the area for months, and they might not ever make that decision, or they might make the decision within a couple of days. It's just really hard to say. So I'd actually had to be within the unsure and undecided camp, but everyone else who was saying that it could happen this weekend, this month, or 6 months from now, I mean, generally all of y'all are not wrong at all. I mean, it could happen at any point, and it's really just more so a guess at this point of when things are going to start going down. So I hope that addresses
What's some things though that's going to probably spur the U.S. into action probably quicker? What's that going to be? If the oil price suddenly starts skyrocketing, like let's say in the next few days it starts going up to like $120 a barrel again or something like that, that'll be another like push toward war basically, because the oil price pretty much dictates the situation right now, and that'll be a pretty big sign that something's about to happen. Also, if we start experiencing a motor oil shortage where the shelves start becoming bare, basically anything that is very visible to the American people and it starts basically affecting public opinion, that's going to be a big motivator to return to war quicker, because that's probably the single most thing that probably weighs on the mind of the administration right now. So right now we're seeing $105 barrel oil. It is creeping back up again, but it's hard to predict where the oil price is going because it's being traded like a cryptocurrency basically. It's volatile as hell, which is abnormal for oil to say the least, which also sort of reflects the trying times we're in. So we'll also have to see how that price goes, but that'll give you a pretty good clue where it's going to go.
But then at the same time, though, considering that the president did say today, and, doubled down on a prior statement that he didn't really care about the economic situation for average Americans in any of his planning whatsoever, the execution of it, if we're taking that at face value, and honestly at this point I would, because we haven't really seen that that's been a point of urgency in any of the plans or actions so far, there's really no reason to believe that even the rising price of oil would necessitate an immediate action as a response, because we haven't seen one yet, and the price of oil has slowly been rising and remaining high over the past month and 2 weeks, or a month and a half to put it in a more descriptive way, and we have seen that hasn't really impacted any of the decision-making even still at this point.
Maybe so, but there's a lot of things that get said, and of course, I'm not going to try to explain away that statement. People can decide how they take that statement. I'm not going to weigh in on that one, but I will say this though: they say they don't care, but at the same time, though, if the price starts going through the roof, that looks bad, and if it looks bad, that generally is something they want to correct, regardless of what they're saying through their rhetoric. So I still think it might spur them to action.
Maybe so. We'll have to see, of course. But of course, once again, because of that statement, there's no real guarantee that it'll happen immediately, or there's really no guarantee that it'll happen in the future. It could just happen any time at this point, and we're largely just waiting to see when it will happen. But we have seen that some Middle Eastern countries are already trying to circumvent their vulnerabilities, at least at the moment. The United Arab Emirates is expediting the construction of a new oil pipeline to double export capacity through Fujairah, routing around the shuttered Strait of Hormuz. Currently, the plan by the United Arab Emirates is to be able to produce a second oil pipeline to Al Fujairah that will be able to access their oil fields throughout the entirety of their country and then ship the oil instead of to their oil loading ports around Dubai and Abu Dhabi all the way over to Al Fujairah, which is here in the entrance of the Gulf of Oman. That allows for the UAE to actually ship out a lot more of its domestically produced oil via the port of Fujairah and not demanding that ships make the now impossible crossing through the Strait of Hormuz to the west coast of the UAE to be able to load up the oil and then make their way out. Some people are about to be saying, well, doesn't this make it a workaround for everybody in the Middle East, because all of the ships would be able to go to the UAE, unload their oil, and then bada bing, bada boom through the pipeline, make it to Fujairah, and then just circumvent the whole thing? Unfortunately not. This pipeline is most likely going to be in construction for over a year from what we're understanding right now, meaning that by the time that this pipeline's even operational, this crisis will most likely have come to pass. And not only that, it's only attempting to bring up the level of domestic production in the UAE in exports through Al Fujairah, meaning that it's already operating at 100% capacity, just handling a fraction of the UAE's oil production. And that means there really wouldn't be a way for ships stuck in the Persian Gulf at the moment to just ferry oil from, say, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, or Bahrain to UAE, load it into UAE, and then pipeline it over into the Gulf of Oman. That unfortunately would not be possible at the moment. So this is just trying to deal with the UAE's internal issues and try and shore up their economic woes at the moment a little bit further. Although it's still
I wonder when they say expedited. It's like, I mean, how quick can you really build a pipeline? It's like there's probably only like a very little amount you can actually speed something like that up, because it's complicated. It takes a lot of effort to build it. So I wonder when they say expedited, do they mean like a matter of like speeding up by just a few months, or speeding up by a few years, or I don't know what they're talking about with that. It sounds rather vague.
I think what they mean by expediting is expediting permits, permit issuances, and such things like that. More so the bureaucratic side of things, because construction goes largely at a set rate. And so generally, I think the only thing they could speed up is the bureaucratic paperwork side of things, and just start cutting through all that red tape and just giving rubber stamp approvals to everything to try and get the construction underway as quickly as possible on all sections of this pipeline. I think that's what they mean.
Maybe so, possibly. But it is weird, though. They're basically trying to pull off the idea that the audience had a while back. They're like, why don't they just like build a canal or something, through the whole area right there and just bypass the Strait of Hormuz? Well, they're doing the second best thing in building a pipeline, but it's not going to be overnight, though. That's the problem. Like, it's not going to be something that's going to happen overnight. No matter if they expedite it or not, it's still going to take time. So maybe and once again, we don't even know the timeline on it. And maybe next year it might be into action, possibly. We just don't know. But it would be nice, though, to be able to bypass the Strait of Hormuz to make that issue go away permanently, if they could try to at least lessen the blow a little bit.
Unfortunately, this won't be able to deal with that kind of capacity, however, because this is just attempting to try and get the UAE's domestic oil production towards Fujairah in larger numbers than anything. Because from what we're knowing right now, I think they're trying to get something like 60% of their domestic oil production to be routed through Fujairah for ships to be loaded there and then make their way on out after mooring in the UAE. So this wouldn't be able to handle any sort of influx of other ships from, say, like Iraq or Kuwait going through the Persian Gulf, basically as a ferry at that point, to the UAE, unloading there, and then pipelining it to Fujairah, and then just completely circumventing the Hormuz. That wouldn't really be a possibility for the other countries. It's just more so just trying to get more of the UAE's oil and their oil only out through Fujairah and not throughout the rest of the Persian Gulf.
Yeah, and also we got to keep in mind as well that when the hostilities restart in full and the U.S. starts attacking Iran again, which it will happen, by the way, you can bank on that. You can take that to the bank for the most part. That I'm sure that this pipeline that's currently being constructed or is about to start being constructed, that's probably going to be a high-value target that Iran's probably going to try to hit, knowing that that's going to take away their leverage. They're probably going to hit the thing, which is going to be obviously a setback. So I wonder how they're planning to deal with that, if they're even prepared at all.
Yeah, I would have to say I don't know how they would be willing to deal with that. And also, there's another issue is that generally right now, we don't know if this is ever going to remain a permanent issue, and hopefully it doesn't. If the Iranians eventually lose control of the Strait of Hormuz, which I would assume that they would because they have to, then the pipeline that the UAE could hypothetically build to try and circumvent the Strait of Hormuz passages becomes a complete economic dead end if they ever build it. Because in shipping, in modernized shipping, the idea is that you want to cut down the amount of times that a good has to be transloaded from one thing to the next. And in this pipeline idea, a ship would have to load up with millions of barrels of oil in Iraq, sail down the Persian Gulf, stop, now more in Dubai, which increases costs because you have to pay for the mooring port location, the dockage rights for however long you're there, and you also have to be able to pay the ports and the customs authorities and whatnot, which adds a lot to the cost. Then all the longshoremen have to hook up the ship, unload all the oil into that pipeline, which then travels the little short distance across the UAE to Fujairah, and then another ship has to be on the other side, and then go through all of the same costs with the portage fees, with the longshoremen, the port authorities, customs costs, and whatnot, and excises, and then load up with the oil and then ship it out. And that becomes completely uneconomical, because if the Strait of Hormuz is reopened at any point in the future, what a ship is going to do is they're going to load up with oil from Iraq, sail through the Persian Gulf, through Hormuz, and out, meaning that any pipeline that would be built to temporarily alleviate the situation right now would be an economic money pit for the UAE in the future, because it would only have a very short time in utility purpose, and then it would be completely obsolete afterwards.
Yeah, hopefully they get it fixed right there. But of course, it's a ticking time bomb, like figuratively speaking, for the UAE, because every single day they're not able to take the oil out of the wells. They're having to flare it off, like for the most part, to avoid damaging their oil abilities and their manufacturing abilities inside the country. So that's sort of a ticking time bomb as well with that. There's just a lot of moving parts to this whole thing, which is another factor in the hostilities probably restarting very soon. There's a lot of things that are time sensitive that just can't be left alone, or otherwise people start losing money. The oil industry start collapsing in these Gulf state countries. Iran starts getting more leverage. So it's just a matter of time.
I would have to agree. Speaking of that oil flaring, we are seeing that such things are currently happening in the area of Abu Dhabi at this moment, as we did get to hear that apparently we are starting to get reports that very few tankers have docked, of course, within this area, and as a result, they are flaring heavily at multiple oil and gas pumping stations to avoid shut-in damage. So we are seeing that is happening at the moment in the UAE, and this is also why they're trying to speed up the pipeline, which unfortunately they can only speed it up so much because they're already starting to see that this is going to become an inevitable disaster for them economically here within the very near future. I have a feeling, folks, that as a result of this, and I don't say this with any kind of glee, but I'm going to say it as a fact, I think that the Dubai and other cities that have been built up quite heavily on oil money in these countries for tourism's sake are going to start looking kind of dilapidated and undermaintained here in the future. All of these Gulf states at this point are guaranteed to be going through financial hardships for probably the next half decade, if not a decade afterwards, due to all the oil wells that they've had to shut down, their reduced oil capacity, therefore their reduced revenue, and also all of the damage that's been caused to global supply lines, shipping, and companies in their countries that will not be producing the kind of income and therefore tax revenue that they have been in the past. And I think that this is going to start affecting the Middle East in a way that's certainly not going to be conducive, because I also have to point out, folks, that with financial hard times comes the rise of radicalism. That's just a common trend everywhere. If you look in the Great Depression here in the United States, during the Great Depression, there was a humongous rise in the membership to the American Nazi Party and the American Communist Party during the Great Depression, because financial hard times leads people to look for the most drastic solutions to the most drastic situations. And we're probably going to see that there's going to be a rise of radical Islamism in the region due to the financial hardships as people try and find radical ways to fix the situation. But we actually have breaking news coming out at this moment. So, Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so the enforcer sort of briefly covered this earlier, but we've gotten some more details about the alleged preparations that Israel and the U.S. is currently undertaking right now to restart hostilities on Iran. And it does appear that we are hearing that, according to two more Middle Eastern officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity, are saying that apparently the U.S. and Israel are engaged in intense preparations, and they're calling it the largest preparations since the ceasefire took effect, a short few weeks back. So it appears to be, it's being confirmed confirmed by multiple sources, not just the ones we were talking about earlier, but also apparently several other officials that are not being named. It looks like they're confirming that. So they would usually not go through this much trouble right here unless they were definitely planning on restarting it. So if they're doing preparations and we're hearing about it now, then I think it's safe to assume they're probably close to finalizing it. That's my guess. But they're saying it's the largest, so it could be much larger strikes than we saw even during the previous attacks.
I have a feeling that that'd be a little bit tough because they are running out of guided munitions. So I mean, I would assume maybe they're going to be the same size. I feel like that's kind of an exaggeration by whoever said this. It's the biggest and the greatest. It's going to be bigger than ever before. The ships have twice the ammo, although they can only carry a finite amount. I have a feeling that that's probably a statement like that. I would hope that when these strikes begin, we don't see that they're bombing bombing Tehran every single night. I hope that we start hearing of a lot more explosions around the Strait of Hormuz, because if we do not hear of any more explosions around the Strait of Hormuz, it does not matter, folks, how many bombs we drop on Tehran and how many bombs we drop on some random government facilities in some far-flung provinces in Iran. If we do not clear the Strait of Hormuz, nothing else is going to be able to fix that problem rather than a direct solution to a direct issue. So hopefully we'll be able to see that their war plans are competently designed rather than just trying to go for major headlines like this biggest thing in Iran, like the biggest peanut was blown up today at the peanut farm in northern Iran. Hopefully we don't hear something like that.
Yeah, it's true. Also, by the way, I see a lot of people asking this. By the way, I wasn't going to bring it up. Some people like get offended about the pizza index, and some people love it, some people don't. It is technically an indicator. These days, it's not such a strong indicator. We kind of use it as a secondary thing. But right now, Pentagon Pizza Watch says the DOCON level, which is the cute name they call it for DEF CON. It's DOCON for pizza. It's now at level 4 apparently. There is a spike in activity at some of the pizza joints around the Pentagon right now. But of course, that's sort of like just a secondary indicator at this point because we don't know if there's people playing with the numbers or they're placing orders or having people go by there and stuff. We don't know what the deal is. They were saying that they were trying to modify what the thing was saying. That's what the Pentagon had said. But it is high, at least right now.
And that's very interesting to hear. We've tried to use that as a reliable source. Generally, though, I'll be honest with y'all, over the past 6 months, it's more common than not to see that it's at elevated levels than not. So it's an indication that they're working overtime. That's without a doubt. But is it giving us anything else rather than that? Kinda not, because I usually notice all the time, folks, even in the midst of the ceasefire, that the DOCON indicators are above average for most places around the Pentagon, and it doesn't really indicate often that something is going to happen. It just indicates they're working a lot.
Yeah, they say one way to tell if it's the Pentagon ordering the pizza or not. If it's the public, they're ordering pepperoni. If it's the Pentagon, they're ordering meat lovers. If it's the Pentagon, so that's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. I don't know what that means. I'm just seeing that in the chat.
Huh? Meat lovers, you say? Huh?
Yeah, no, I don't know what that means. I'm just. That's what people are telling me.
Actually, folks. There's something else that's really interesting and we haven't told you all about that also tells you when the Pentagon is working overtime. There's these certain nightclubs around the area that cater to a certain form of a proclivity within the world. And generally, whenever the Pentagon's working overtime, you see that the pizza orders go up, and the attendance at these certain nightclubs, these certain sexual proclivities, are generally quite low. And I'm not kidding; that's literally seen simultaneously. I think it's something like Freddy's Bar, something like that. It's something along those lines, but it's near to the Pentagon, and usually its attendance is quite down when they're working overtime.
Yeah, a bit of a strange thing. That's the alternative bar they call it right there. I guess that's a thing possibly. It does appear to correlate. Like when something's happening, it looks like the attendance goes down at that particular alternative bar right there. Kind of a strange thing, by the way. Also, I see people saying, some people are saying the worst security violations of the Pentagon were people delivering pizzas. I don't think they let the pizza delivery people in the Pentagon, do they?
They drop it off in the
work
lobby.
the Pentagon. Yeah, I thought they did. I don't think they would just let them in like that. That would be a big violation to let a pizza person just wander around. I'm sure you'd all of a sudden start seeing a bunch of CCP agents volunteering as pizza people if that was going to happen.
Man, you just see like this guy show up. He's got the whole like party like lapel on him. I am Lil Pule. I'm here to deliver pizza. It's like, nah, you ain't delivering no pizza. You got a camera in your ankle sock. Come on, it's like you ain't delivering no pizza. But beyond that, that's actually the case. I saw someone say that it's strip clubs that the attendance goes down. I'm sorry, it's not. There's not really a lot of those for some reason around the Pentagon, but there are some other forms of nightclubs. And I would heavily encourage you to research it because it's actually kind of a little bit hilarious, like the kind of nightclubs. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on out of this whole area of the Pentagon and whatnot, and what the DOCON's indicating. And we've also been able to see that in the midst of all that, there was an E-3 Sentry that was airborne today in the Persian Gulf doing some laps right outside of Abu Dhabi. So looks like it was most likely in support of aerial operations in the Gulf of Oman as a part of the ongoing blockade. Or it might be something else, but I generally assume it's blockade support. We've also been able to hear, additionally, inside of Iraq, there was some U.S. Air Force activity over Kurdistan. And we've also been able to see as well that 2 drones apparently targeted the Iranian Kurdish opposition group north of Iraq's Erbil, security sources told Reuters. So it does appear the IRGC attacks against some Kurdish headquarters are still continuing within that area. In the midst of all that, by the way, we have to have Comedy Hour with the Middle East. Comedy Hour is every hour with the Middle East. Hezbollah conducted another attack on northern Israel today with their rockets. Some of them did make impact in northern Israel. The Israelis are also continuing their war against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon on Lebanon's territory. But the president proudly announced today that the ceasefire has been extended another 45 days.
Holy moly. What the world? Man, I tell you what, the ceasefires sure have changed over the years. Like, I remember back in the day when I was just a youngin', when a ceasefire was a ceasefire. Like, I remember that back in the day. Yeah, hell, it feels like it was just like a couple of years ago that ceasefire was really a ceasefire. Now there is no cease in fire. Now it's just fire, no cease. So that's a strange concept, by the way. There's been nonstop fighting between Israel and Lebanon. I mean, Lebanon's been being hit by Israel. Lebanon's firing rockets. It's nothing new. It's been happening for weeks ever since this alleged ceasefire has been in effect.
Man, this is the equivalent on death row of announcing a moratorium to executions and then executing 5 people over the next week afterwards. It's about the same thing. Like the ceasefires just don't mean anything anymore. I've never heard, folks, of a ceasefire like this one, because it was originally, I think, a week-long ceasefire and they broke it within the first 3 days. Then they extended another 14 days, which meant nothing because they were already going to blows at that point. And now at the end of the additional 14 days, we're now extending it another 45 days. And basically, the whole length of all of these ceasefires combined, the ceasefire maybe lasted at best 3 days, and now we're just pretending like it's still going on when it's not. I mean, right now, the IDF is getting absolutely hammed on by Hezbollah FPV drones in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah is firing rockets into northern Israel, and Israel's bombing everything in Lebanon, including Beirut, the Baalbek Valley, and southern Lebanon, like there's no tomorrow. So I don't know what kind of ceasefire this one is, but it's not.
A rumor has it that Hezbollah might have put out a statement earlier today. I wasn't really sure if I should believe it or not, but there was some statement they put out saying, we will abide by ceasefire. And they meant like they see fire, not like ceasefire. So I think maybe they misunderstand what the word means.
We will abide by ceasefire. We fire 6 times. 6 times every hour. Like,
they need the Houthi spokesman for this one. Bring him out. We will stop the ceasefire when it's time to stop the ceasefire, and we will do it today because it's the right day.
Hold on, man. If it was the Houthi spokesperson, he'd be saying, today the Hezbollah forces delivered a deadly blow to northern Israel. We've been able to win several rockets. Please read the Yallah. We've been able to make sure that the Israeli aggressors inside southern Lebanon have been able to pay dearly for their transgressions against the Arab people and also the people of the Islamic faith. We'll even make sure that praise be to Yallah. I mean, like, that is the Houthi spokesperson. Really something else. But it is time for us, folks, to move on out of the Middle East, because that is all of the news that we had from down there today. And it was quite an event. I mean, we're just waiting for the war to come back at this point. So, come back next time, folks. The war is definitely going to be starting again at some point. We just don't know exactly when. But moving us on out of all of this news in the Middle East, we do have to get on into some other news that we've been able to hear out of the Americas today. We'll be saving the Ukraine war for last because there's a lot to cover there today, and I mean quite a lot. So I'm going to make sure to cover some of our smaller topics before we get there. We were able to hear that apparently some sort of a fire at a gas processing plant happened at Lake Maracaibo today, which we saw in this clip. I'm not going to lie, dude. I thought that guy in that clip was you talking.
How dare you?
Man, it sounded like you're very close to the microphone. You're like, oh my God, look at that gas plant explosion. Oh my God. I was like, I don't understand him. It doesn't sound like he's speaking English. And I was like, oh, it's the guy in this clip. Like, I was like, that confused the hell out of me. It literally sounded, dude, like you were really close to your mic. Huh?
Look at this though. I mean, it looks to me like somebody might have sabotaged it or something with the way this fire's happening.
Hey, it's quite a large one, I'll say that. And these guys are panicking.
How is this going to hurt the oil imports?
Well, this is a natural gas
heavy
processing plant.
We need that heavy petroleum.
That what do they call it? Sour crude? We like our crude like we like our politicians, sour. But we've also been able to see that today the Coast Guard lit up a narco boat down in the Mediterranean or the Pacific. We didn't really get a good geolocation on this one, but we did get to see them engage it. So here's the clip. Those are warning shots, by the way. He's not missing that badly. I want to make that clear. They're making lines in front of the boat for them to see the spray of the bullets impacting, to try and see if they'll stop, and then if they don't stop, they'll forcefully stop them. And we see that the boat, it does look to be coming to a stop, so it worked. And now we see them firing shots at the engine to be able to disable the motors. You can actually see some of the splashes here getting very close to the engine when they miss.
Man, thanks to the Coast Guard.
Man, the Coast Guard don't play. You know, everybody always thinks the Coast Guard is just out there saving people from sinking ships. They're also laying down lead sometimes.
Oh no, I know the Coast Guard. I mean, I know somebody that's in the Coast Guard. That their training in the Coast Guard is as wild as the Marines, if not wilder.
Honestly, man, I would say that the Coast Guard's training is above everybody else's. It's almost getting kind of like in the realm of quasi-special forces kind of training that they have for them. Like, it's very, very thorough.
Yeah, I would say so. And people underrate them too, because they're like, oh, it's the Coast Guard. They're not even really a branch. But I mean, they go through it.
We see them throwing down what appears to be possibly some sort of aid equipment for them to be able to jump out of the ship or the boat.
Man, he chucked that at him like it was a chunk of bread or something like that. Take this, you heathens.
Bro, he said, "Here's your damn aid." Like, he didn't throw the bread out at him. But it's not bread, by the way. I don't know what's in these packs. Because they threw down some flotational devices, and then they threw down whatever the hell these are. But I just don't know what they are. So I hate to tell you all that, folks. I don't know what that is. But if anybody's ever been in the Coast Guard and thrown one of these out of a helicopter, let everybody know in the chat what they are. But moving us on out of that whole deal and out of the States, it is, well, not the States, but generally the Americas, it is now time for us folks to get to the big news that came out today about China. I hate to tell you all, folks, but last night I said that the president was probably going to come back from China and say that, you know, China big, Taiwan small, therefore our foreign policy is changing. If only I had known, folks, that wasn't going to be a joke. It was actually exactly what was said today. We have been able to hear that the President of the United States has announced that China is a very, very powerful big country, and Taiwan is a very small island, adding that China is 59 miles away from Taiwan, while the U.S. is 9,500 miles away, and that is a difficult problem.
I wonder if it's such a difficult problem. I wonder if they would say that if they recognize the fact that TSMC is on that island. And right now, we have no good way to replace TSMC that's currently based on Taiwan. Because while TSMC is trying to build plants here in the United States, they're not finished yet, at least according to what I've heard. So is it really that difficult of a problem, considering the fact that if Taiwan falls to China, then we lose our chip pipeline for the most part? I mean, that could be a big problem.
Yeah, that could be a big problem. Also, I got to say though, isn't this kind of a little goofy that they're 9,500 miles away? So this is kind of an excuse to not get involved with Taiwan. But at the same time, the president was more than willing to go to China to make a whole bunch of trade deals with them, which we just did, although they're 9,500 miles away.
Yeah, I mean, everything's technically far away. I mean, should we just like, pack up and go home from everywhere because it's technically far away? I mean, that's why we're a superpower. We can power project anywhere in the globe.
I find this whole notion, folks, of this deal is this far away from us and it's this close to them to be kind of a little bit of a goofy one because, you know, isn't that kind of how the whole sphere of influence of ours works? I mean, none of our allies, rather than Mexico and Canada, are even close to us at all. Literally everybody's thousands of miles away. I mean, Japan is 9,500 miles away from us, yet we're allies with Japan. South Korea is even farther from us. It's like almost 10,000 miles away, yet we have the entire U.S. 8th Army permanently deployed in South Korea. So what's up with this kind of concept that Taiwan's too far away to defend? Because South Korea and Japan clearly aren't too far away to defend. We have an entire army and a navy that's based out of Japan and South Korea. But for some reason, though, Taiwan is just a little too far away. Although it's the same distance as the other two countries that I just mentioned. I find that to be rather odd, don't you all? I would say so. But we've also been able to hear that this is now holding up a little arms deal, a $14 billion one that we had already agreed to with Taiwan. And now the president's saying that he hasn't determined whether to move forward on the major arms package for Taiwan after the summit with Xi Jinping. So it actually appears, folks, that while we were thinking at the moment that it looked like the U.S. wasn't going to be selling out Taiwan, it looks like we're now possibly in the process of selling out Taiwan, which would be absolutely detrimental to our influence and sphere of influence within East Asia and also our strategic defensive capabilities in the future if China ever took physical possession of the island of Taiwan due to an armed invasion. We also were able to hear right before the stream that the president was also warning Taiwan about not declaring actual legitimate independence from China and declaring themselves as a independent nation. So we've been able to hear the gamut today, and it's not looking that good. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this in the moment, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So the U.S. admin is currently taking under consideration whether or not to follow through with the $14 billion weapons package for Taiwan, which, by the way, has already been approved by Congress. So it's already passed the congressional test of approval, but now it appears the U.S. President's holding it up. So what are your thoughts about that? 55% said Taiwan will get the weapons eventually. 26% said Taiwan will not get the weapons, and 15% said I'm 50-50 on this one. And I will say this. It would be a little bit of a strange thing to do. Because putting ourselves in the opposite shoes for just a second here. The president just left the meeting with Xi Jinping, and he's trying to make it sound like it went well, it went good, and they agreed on some things. If he immediately approved the weapons package to Taiwan, that would be a direct slap in the face to Xi Jinping, and that would mess up the whole narrative. So it could be they simply waiting like maybe a week or two before they like quietly start approving parts of it, or maybe the whole thing altogether, possibly. That could be it, just so that way it doesn't look like a slap in the face to Xi Jinping. Hopefully that's what they're planning on doing, because if we don't give the weapons to Taiwan, that'll be signaling to China that largely we're not behind Taiwan's independence, and we're not behind supporting their independence either. So that would pretty much be largely a green light for China to invade the island, because at that point China would naturally start questioning whether or not the U.S. would defend them in the event of a war. So I'm gonna be with the 14%. I'm kind of 50-50, but I'm leaning toward the idea that Taiwan will get the weapons because they've already been approved, by the way. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm actually leaning more towards the 27% that Taiwan will most likely not get the weapons, because it's very easy to pull the wool over some people's eyes in this current administration and make them think that the enemy actually has their best interest in mind. If you just do a little nice thing here and there and just, kind of like fluff up a little bit of some, bravado statements, you can generally get anything. So I'll be honest with y'all. I think that this might actually be in jeopardy of stopping the arms shipments to the Republic of China because of the current outlook right now of the U.S. administration. Also, the fact that we're starting to grow our trade relations with the People's Republic of China when we should be attempting to offshore them to other countries is certainly not giving me any good indication that we're going to be generally supporting Taiwan in the future, as our reprioritization of increasing trade with the Chinese, which we had prior been trying to wane off off of is giving me the idea that we're starting to shift over our preferences to the communist Chinese and not those on the island of Taiwan. So not really having that good of an outlook on the situation at the moment. And while the Secretary of State might be saying things yesterday like we're still committed to Taiwan, the president also said that he's not committed to any position today at all on Taiwan, which is throwing this whole thing up in the air. And many of y'all will know that those sorts of statements have been made by the president prior in other places of the world, like Europe, when we start to openly treat the Europeans as hostile groups, politically, diplomatically, economically, or militarily. And we also know that a similar statement had been made about prior situations like Cuba, Venezuela, Greenland, and others, where that was the warming statement to immediately doing a complete 180 on our foreign policy prerogative. So I would say that generally, this is something that is not sounding too positive to me whatsoever.
Also, real quick, because I see people mentioning this, by the way, people are like, why should we care about Taiwan? Like, who cares? It's over there. It's next to China, etc. Most people know that's been studying the Taiwan situation that the main crux of the issue is that Taiwan is home to TSMC, which produces about 90% of the world's semiconductors, which goes in everything from car electronics, your refrigerators, your microwaves, your smartphones, your computers, etc. It goes in literally everything. So if China is able to take Taiwan and take control of those facilities and somehow cut the United States off from that, that is a monumental national security threat, and that's understating it. That would probably be one of the biggest threats we've faced so far. That could be bigger than the Strait of Hormuz getting choked off by the Iranian regime. So I see some people saying, well, guys, you're really just overlooking the issue because TSMC built a fabrication plant here in Arizona. That is true. They did build one in Arizona. It came online in 2024, but it's just one fab, though. That's not nearly enough to replace all the Taiwan capacity. They're planning on doing a phase 2 and also 3, apparently, here in the United States, but it's hitting some snags, according to what I'm hearing right now. So it can make a dent, but this only represents like 3 to 4% of the total capacity, that one fab in Arizona. I mean, that's like a drop in the bucket compared to what Taiwan produces as a whole on the island itself. So that's the problem that people are overlooking. We have not properly supplanted Taiwan by putting this manufacturing here in America to let Taiwan go at this point. And that's looking at it from a purely transactional perspective. I mean, that's forgetting the humanitarian side of it. I mean, we're not just looking at Taiwan to extract the resources. I'd presume that we're trying to support a democracy in the process. So if we're looking at it purely from a transactional standpoint, I mean, we still can't abandon Taiwan.
Also, additionally, the Republic of China's government torpedoed any ideas or speculations by TSMC to further offshore into the United States of America, as they actually told TSMC that they could not produce or construct any further factories within the United States of America, and the rest of their production capabilities will have to remain in Taiwan if they want their cooperation with the ROC's government to remain positive. So that means that TSMC is not going to offshore anything else to the United States of America, and they're stuck in Taiwan. And that was a strategic decision by the Republic of China's government to make sure that the U.S. is going to have to die on the Taiwanese hill with Taiwan if it ever came down to it. Because that is one of their biggest selling pitches right now to the United States, is that you can't abandon us even if you screw yourself over strategically, because you're also going to screw yourself over economically because we have TSMC. And so the Republic of China is not going to allow that to leave. And I see some people saying, well, if we do that, maybe they'll allow it to offshore to Arizona. That's even a further reason for the Republic of China's government to wield TSMC like a crutch, basically, and go, we're not allowing any of their manufacturing capabilities that are currently in Taiwan to leave and go anywhere. They're all staying here, and that is a government order, and if they attempt to subvert that, we will start to take reciprocal actions against TSMC for trying to subvert the laws of the ROC. So that's definitely not going to be happening anytime soon, and Taiwan knows the position they're in, and so they're going to try and keep TSMC on that island, hell or high water, which is one of their best sales pitches for defense from Western countries.
Also, I saw someone else say, so chips are worth going to war with China over Taiwan?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes, without a doubt. Like, I'm not sure if they were expecting us to say no, but make no mistake, a war with China is going to be hideous. Like, that's going to be the worst war America's ever gone into, probably in the entire history of the country. But at the same time, though, that semiconductor issue is that serious. It is highly serious. If China gets control over that, that's going to bring an end to pretty much every technological advancement that the U.S. is currently making. It's going to bring that to a sudden halt. That would be horrible for us as the United States. That would pretty much cement China as the world's #1 superpower at that point if they pulled something like that off. So it is that serious. I think people are underestimating or they're not fully educated on that topic possibly, which is why it's important to research it, by the way, because that's why Taiwan is so critical. That's why that small island right there is creating such a ruckus, is mainly because of that fact alone.
Well, here's a better question. I mean, because everybody always makes it sound like it's just a little thing, it's no big deal. Would you fight and die if someone told you that tomorrow an enemy country is going to come and steal all of our farm fields from us and leave you with no food to eat? I mean, it's just a little bite to eat. It's just a ear of corn, and a couple of carrots in the ground and some potatoes. I mean, would you fight and die for that? Would you fight and die for anything, or like iron or steel or coal or oil? Like people always like to make it sound like it's a nothing burger when we go to war over oil or we go to war over some resource. But without those resources, life as we know it is not possible. Those resources are worth fighting and dying over because they're what make the country what it is. That's why you get to hop in a car that's made out of foreign steel, that's either assembled here in America or overseas, and then shipped over here, and you're able to wear your clothes the way you are, and you're able to turn that car on and have gas inside of it that was imported usually from foreign countries or produced here, and then drive down to a restaurant to go eat food that was produced with fertilizers shipped in from overseas and all of the other raw components, for you to just live a normal day that you don't really think about a whole lot. But it's all of these random resources that we've compiled and fight to keep around the world that make it possible for you to just eat a day and to live a day, so that way you can, ask the question, is it worth dying for this one resource? And the answer is yes, because if we don't have that one resource, you, the person who's asking that question right now, are screwed over, and we're all screwed over. So every resource of the United States or of our allies that we can't find anywhere else, it is worth fighting and dying for, because if we don't have it, then what do we have left?
Yeah, and that would pretty much hand China so many victories in one basket, which honestly, when you really think about it, like on one hand, I kind of hate to think about it because it's kind of a bit of a horrific thought, kind of on the side, but of course, we have to analyze it. No matter how horrific it sounds, it has to be analyzed. That would pretty much hand quantum computing, that would hand that victory to China at that point. Also, it would hand AI supremacy to a large part to China as well. Pretty much anything that we're currently working on. I mean, even, like, for example, even stuff going to space, I mean, those require those chips as well. I mean, literally everything now, because everything is connected, everything's a computer now. Like the president once said, it's all computer. It literally is all computer now. So without the chip, without those like 2 nanometer, 3 nanometer, even 4 nanometer chips, we're going to be in some deep trouble. And we don't have the time right now to start building out that many fab plants across the country. Time is not on our side with that type of thing, and China knows that. And that's why if they move on Taiwan, we're going to be in some serious trouble. And that's why we have to go to war over it if they did that.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I also saw someone say, resources are important, but show me one soldier who would list it as their reason for serving. Well, let me put it this way. So they're not willing to fight for resources, as you're saying, which is totally fine. It's a democracy after all. So we lose Taiwan, we lose all of Europe, we lose Canada, we lose Mexico, we lose everybody in the world. And then eventually the U.S. economy starts to crumble. Prices rise, wages stagnate, people start starving. So that soldier at the end of the day, because he wasn't willing to fight for resources, he's going to be fighting for his impoverished family, living in a house with enough holes in it that it looks like Swiss cheese. It's drafty and it's damp. His siblings are dying from pneumonia on the floor because there's no pharmaceuticals, there's no medicine, there's hardly any food, there's no jobs to be had. But damn it, finally, now the country's threatened, he will go out and fight and die for his family that's already fighting and dying on the home front just to survive every day because there's nothing left. That's why we fight and die for resources, like as a concept for the larger part. And you'll see that basically every single war on the history of on this planet has been fought for some form of resource for the larger part. Very few of them have been fought for anything else. Because if you don't fight for resources, you're going to end up having nothing. And I would say that it'd be a lot better for the nation to understand that we have to fight and die for our resources rather than live in some sort of a hovel underground, dying of diseases because we don't have any modern conveniences, technologies, or equipment, because we wanted to say that, well, everything wasn't worth fighting for at the end of the day, rather than our very lives. So then we have to suffer the rest of our lives as a result of that poor thought process and action. It's not a good idea. But anyways, Moving us on from that, we have also been able to hear that apparently in China, they've also made an announcement today, according to the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, that teams on both sides are still working on details for outcomes on trade. So it does appear that there are some trade deals possibly in the works at this moment between the U.S. and the People's Republic of China, which I would say is definitely not a good idea. But with all of that in mind, we are going to be getting on into the rest of our news that we have from around the world, starting in Washington, D.C., and then moving on into Europe. But before we get to all of that, because we still have a lot to go, I do want to make sure to thank everyone for watching so far tonight. We have 15,000 people here at this moment right now, and 71,000 people have watched this stream up till this point. I've got to say, that is an absolutely amazing and incredible thing that folks like y'all watch this news every day, and we are absolutely honored to know that so many people continue to come to this channel and choose it to be their primary source of news. If it wasn't for each and every single one of y'all, we would not have a crowd to be able to report the news to. We wouldn't have people to enjoy it, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running every day. And so, as a thanks to all of y'all giving y'all's time, we're going to be making sure to answer 3 questions from the chat here before we move on into the rest of our news. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat right here, this one's going to go to Friar Robert. And thank you very much, Friar, for that massive $202 support, by the way. Crazy support. And we appreciate generosity very, very much because, of course, like we always say, it's that support that literally keeps our channel running every single night. And a huge shout out to Friar for also supporting it tonight. And they said, I'm of the opinion now we can't go back to war. We used up all of our munitions, and all the flights have been a bluff. And the same as the comments, we are going to destroy their entire country. We're all a bluff. We will not be opening the Strait at all. Everything is bluff and bluster and thoughts. I'm honestly, Friar, before Enforcer, answers the thing on his end, we really don't have a choice with the Strait of Hormuz. It's the same type of crux that we would be in if Taiwan got taken or got invaded. We would have to act. Like that's one of the few circumstances. It's the Strait of Hormuz. We have to act. We can't just sit back and watch the situation, because if we do that, we're going to be experiencing the worst economic turmoil the country's ever seen. If we just sit back and just take a passive role in it, it's going to be horrible for all of us. So, I agree with you. Like they have used up munitions. They've kind of put us in a little bit of a precarious spot right now, but I'm not sure if we really have a choice anymore. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say a humongous thanks to you for the incredible support, Robert, and a very interesting sort of a question. But I'd have to say, much like Matthew said, there isn't really a choice. Because right now, if we pack up and leave, they're going to keep blockading the Strait of Hormuz for the rest of time until we go over there and end it. So we're going to have to go to war over this at some point, and we're going to be economically run into the ground as a result. And an amazing super chats like yours won't even be possible for you or anyone else, because there won't be enough money to go around to spare outside of paying for everything that's necessary for survival in this country to be able to support a channel like ours and ask a question like that, because there's just not going to be anything left. If oil comes to an absolute stop, our economy comes to a stop. And when our economy comes to a stop, whatever supplies are left at this point for people to buy at the points of distribution in their localities are going to start skyrocketing in price, because there's going to be such a small amount of shipments coming in, such a small amount of products coming in, and such a large and voracious appetite in the public for whatever is coming in, that basically everybody's going to be in a bidding war for whatever's left on the daily, meaning that there's not going to be a lot of money left in this country, and hardship is going to become the norm instead of prosperity like we've seen for the past 80 years. And so we have to go back to war to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, because if we do not reopen the Strait of Hormuz, we have doomed our country and many others that are called allies to an absolute ruin economically. And that's just something that we cannot afford. The government's responsibility at the end of the day is to look out for the benefit of the common citizenry. And the common citizenry are all of us. The common citizenry is everyone in the government and everywhere else. If you're a citizen of the United States and an ally or a citizen of an allied nation, then you are a part of what the U.S. is supposed to be looking out for and their interests. The U.S. cannot start a war with such horrendous strategy that we see that the very thing that Iran can do, which is blockade the Strait, gets pulled out and used on everybody. And then as a result, we just pack up and leave after making the largest strategic blunder in modern history, and then let ourselves and everyone else suffer the consequences. That is very much going, in my opinion at least, against the very grain and idea of what the U.S. government is supposed to be doing, which is in improving the lot of the citizenry. Now they've taken such incompetent and deliberate actions to the detriment of the nation and its citizenry that they're now the ones imposing the suffering on our people, and it's their duty. as a government, as a moral principle, to fix this dilemma and fix this problem that they've now created from their own incompetence by any point or measure. Otherwise, we'll all stand to suffer as a consequence of that. So I hope that addresses that well. And at this point, hell or high water, they'll just have to find a way. If they have the munitions, then they can do it. If they don't have the munitions, they'll have to find another way. But they'll have to find a way because we just can't leave at this point. It would be worse than doing something about it. But a big thanks to you so much for that incredible support, Friar Robert. And I hope that does answer your question incredibly well. And thank you so much for the amazing support, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. We wouldn't be able to keep it running, and we wouldn't be able to answer really good questions like that. I think it's good to always criticize, and I think that was a good critical question of whether or not we should go back, and I hope that my answer was fairly decent along with Matthew's on why at this point it is necessary for us to take such an action. But a humongous thanks once again, and we are on to the next one.
Our next one is going to go to none other than fakeandblank.com. Unfortunately, I had to censor it, but they put in a $100 support, and we do appreciate that very, very much. Also, extremely generous support from fakeandblank.com. They said, my name on YouTube is literally what China is, which is very funny.
And I gotta say, I think it's so much for support, and I suppose so. I suppose that may be the case with the Chinese. But I do have to thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, we wouldn't be able to keep it running, and we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality every single day. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again for that unbelievably massive support. I hope that has addressed that well. And before we get our last question of the segment, I just saw someone in the chat say, F a lavish lifestyle. Oh man. Oh, they did it. They got us. Oh man. It's always easy for folks to say that. Like, I don't think those people are really in connection with what it was like in this country back in the day. Do y'all know what it was like back in the day when people really did suffer and people really did have to go through tumult every day to survive? They died from diseases and their quality of life was poor about a century ago. Y'all know what they wanted? They wanted what we have today, and they fought and struggled and worked every day to make that happen. And that's why we all live in the comfortable world we live in today. It's a world largely devoid of disease. It's a world devoid of hunger. It's a world devoid of generally needs, and it's a world mostly of just wants. And people have lived in this world, I would say, really ever since the end of the Second World War. I would say that the boomers were the first to live in this, but every generation since then has lived in that same kind of bubble where we're largely detached from the reality of the world, which is suffering at its finest. And people these days in America always feel really comfortable about saying things like F a lavish lifestyle, not realizing that not living a lavish lifestyle is far worse than living one. And I think a lot of people are just so detached from what real hardship and real suffering really is, that sounds so easy and comfortable to say because they've never been in the throes and clutches of poverty and desolation like some people have seen around the world. So remember that when you say something like that, you're saying that from a position to where you've never suffered true hardship in this country. Hardship of what we're about to be seeing here soon, if this keeps going the way it is something that no one's seen in this country since the Great Depression. But with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be getting on to the rest of the news for the night. So what do we got?
All right, so this one goes to Ron Fannin, and thank you very much, Ron, for that $50 support, and we do appreciate the support very, very much. And Ron said, I've been watching for some time now, and love how you guys cover the world news, and LSA will never die.
Hey, and thank you so much for your support, Ron. And long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never truly die. And I gotta say, thank you so much for loving how we cover the news. We try our best. And I hope that we kind of balance out the factuality, the analysis, and then also the jokes, as well as we can to make it not too much of any, but a decent, well-rounded amalgamation of it all. And so I got to thank you incredibly once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, it is time for us to move on out of this question segment and on into Washington, D.C. We have a couple of updates today from the Capitol. First, the first thing that the president had mentioned when he left the People's Republic of China is China has a ballroom I'm not kidding. That was literally the first thing that was ever mentioned. And so should the U.S. It's under construction ahead of schedule, and yada yada yada. And it'll be the best and greatest and all that. But that was a little interesting. Moving us on from that, we've also been able to hear that now, according to the U.S. government, which was stated in an interview today, or more so from the president, now the president is saying that it is a good thing to have 500,000 foreign Chinese students on student visas in the United States taking up seats in American colleges. And also, it is totally fine for the People's Republic of China to purchase farmland around secure military sites here in the United States of America, which has been at some points in the past alleged to be used by the People's Republic of China to conduct signals intelligence gathering on U.S. forces and facilities, and to also be able to gather intelligence on U.S. force dispositions here in NORTHCOM, which is what the United States is a part of as far as their global command structure. I'd have to say that as far as this sort of a situation, while this is something within our borders, this actually does fall within foreign policy and national security for the larger part. And I would have to say that allowing 500,000 seats in the United States of America in college to be held by Chinese students is really ridiculous. I mean, also, I gotta say, folks, for a lot of people in the United States, including the president, to say that China is world-class in education, we're falling far behind, why in the world do these 500,000 Chinese students want to get student visas to come here to the United States and learn from a U.S. college? If they're worse, why in the world would they want to do that? Why don't they go to the Zhujiang Linghai College in Hubei province in China and go learn there? If the education is that much better in China, why do 500,000 of them need to come here? That's really a question I think we need an answer to. And also, on top of that, why in the world does China need to own U.S. farmland? That's not really a thing that we would consider to be a prerogative in national security. For one,
Yeah, apparently China doesn't think it's good for national security either, because you can't go to China and go buy farmland as an American. You definitely can't do that.
yeah, you can't. And let me see here. Let's see, how many college seats in the U.S.? So the U.S. has about 19 million seats in colleges nationwide as of, let's see, 2025. So, Matthew, can you do the math here really quickly on a calculator? What is 500,000 divided by 19 million? What is the percentage at which Chinese students would be taking up college seats here in the United States of America?
500,000 divided by 19 million?
Yes. Because that would give us our...
0.02.
So 2% of all college seats in the country are going to be taken up by Chinese students coming here on student visas. That could be seats for American citizens to be able to go to college and get an education at American universities, so that way we can continue to grow out our educated worker base to be able to make sure that our advanced industries still have serviceable manpower from the United States of America. Instead, we're going to be giving away 2% or so of the college seats to the People's Republic of China instead in our own home country. How many American students go to China for college, I wonder? You know what? Let's go pull that up, actually. That's something I just did off the cuff. Let's see. How many U.S. college students in China? Oh, yes. Oh, this is very reciprocal. Matthew, how many do you think there are?
How many Chinese students are, what was that?
How many American students are studying abroad in China right now? How many do you think there are?
Probably like a few thousand.
Oh, really? A few thousand, you say? That seems very disparaged, really. 500,000 versus a few thousand. Are you sure that's the number?
Yeah, what is it?
900.
That sounds about right there. I'm not sure if too many people that want to go. I haven't heard of a Harvard in China, so probably not too many.
Well, I mean, I have heard, Matthew, that some Chinese students do actually go and learn at the Kim Il-sung University in Pyongyang. I've heard it's world class in education. But beyond that, though, I gotta say, folks, that seems a little bit unfair to me. The Chinese are going to be allowed to come over in 500,000 a year on student visas and take up seats in U.S. universities and colleges nationwide that are raising tuition rates across the country because there's only a finite amount of seats that so many American college students can get into every year. In the meantime, the Chinese only allow, at the moment, 900 American students to study in the People's Republic of China. A little bit unfair to me, if you ask me. But, apparently this is now within the U.S.'s national security prerogatives. But I'd have to tell you all straight up that it's not. The Chinese buying farmland in the United States of America is a national security risk, and allowing for 500,000 foreign Chinese students to study abroad and take up that many seats in U.S. universities is also not good for our long-term longevity in the United States of America as far as keeping an educated worker base running and operational. That means that we're going to have to outsource a lot of those jobs to other foreign countries that had their citizens educated either here in a U.S. university or abroad elsewhere in their own home country's university or another nation's university. So I think that this isn't really within strategic interest for the United States. But moving us on out of that news in Washington, we have also been able to hear, just to make sure that we covered everything down here, and we did. We are now going to be moving on over and into London in the United Kingdom. As we have been able to hear, that according to the news that came out today, the UK's 30-year government bond yield has surged to 5.85%, and this is the highest level since March in 1998. According to the Kobisi letter, they're stating that global bond markets are bracing for severe inflation, and this is why we're seeing that the bond yields are surging so high within the United Kingdom. We've also been able to see that the British are training Ukrainian pilots as a part of their, let's see here, I believe it's called, the UK Standard Training in the UK under Operation Interstorm. I'm not going to show you the whole clip here, but it was pretty neat. They were just showing the Ukrainian pilots that were undergoing training here, which is always neat to see. But beyond that, just generally continued training for Ukrainian forces before they get sent back to Ukraine and put into their combat roles. We've now been able to hear news from the Polish government today that according to what Representative Don Bacon said within the U.S. Congress, Poland was not notified of the withdrawals of U.S. forces and the lack of deployments that were now going to be happening under U.S. the U.S. Army of Europe and Africa across the entirety of the European continent, which one of its two Atlantic Resolve rotational divisions is based inside of Poland. According to what Representative Don Bacon said, he said in response to Sean Parnell, who stated that the decision to withdraw troops was already notified to the Poles, Representative Don Bacon responded that this is baloney. For starters, Poland was not notified. Senior leaders contacted me yesterday saying they were blindsided, and I've learned EUCOM did not say there was a minimal risk by canceling the deployment. This was a foolish and embarrassing course of events. So it does appear that this is already meeting some significant backlash within the Congress at the moment from the lack of deployments that are being made that are greatly weakening the U.S.'s defensive position in Europe and our allied defensive position across the whole of Europe. And it also does appear that there's, as usual, at least according to Don Bacon, been some significant misinformation surrounding the sequence of events that has transpired on U.S. force dispositions and also U.S. deterrence against our enemies in places like Europe's area of responsibility. Outside of that,
That's really lame to do that, especially to Poland, because out of all the NATO countries out there, Poland is probably one of the most countries that takes it very seriously. The Russian threat, I think they're the only country meeting the 5% that the U.S. was complaining about a while back. Poland spends heavily on their military, so if there's any country out there, it's probably like the ideal model NATO member. It would probably be Poland. So if this is true, and they apparently didn't notify them and didn't give them that courtesy before they pulled the troops, then that would be a pretty lame thing to do.
I would have to agree. And if Poland spends 4.7% of their GDP on their armed forces, they were about to meet the 5% quota before the president started to make a stink about a 5% quota. The U.S. wasn't even close to reaching that. We only spend 3.2% of GDP annually on the armed forces. And so now we're going to do this. I would have to tell you, folks, that the U.S. not notifying and speaking to allies about anything at this point is becoming a reoccurring trend. I would say that Poland, not to say that this would be in America's interest, but for the Polish perspective, I would say that the Polish would be well within their rights at this point to announce the expulsion of all U.S. forces out of the Republic of Poland, and then see the United States have to come back and grovel and beg them not to do that, because that would cost the United States a lot of money to have to pack up and just remove all of our forces out of Poland and then have to try and find how to base them elsewhere or just withdraw them entirely out of the region.
I think the U.S. is already doing that anyway. I think they're pretty much planning to withdraw pretty much everything.
Well, I would go ahead and preempt him right now at the head if I was in the Polish government, because much like the Saudis did with saying, no, you're not conducting military operations from our airspace, you're not even telling us what you're doing. I would do the same as the Poles right now. I go, oh, well, you're expelled. You'll have 1 week or 2 weeks to pack up everything and get out, and just let the United States figure that out, or ask the Polish government at that point, if they can stay, and flip the situation around on its head, because this is getting ridiculous. And not only that, so far, folks, we have not seen the Congress challenge this once. And all of these sorts of moves that we're seeing right now are generally not authorized under the National Defense Authorization Act of 2025, well, 2024 actually, where any significant reduction in troops beyond a certain number, which I believe is something like 50,000 in Europe, would require congressional approval. And all of these canceled deployments are meeting that qualification where it will require congressional approval to do such a thing. And we're not seeing that the Congress is challenging this at all. It's significantly weakening our defensive capabilities in Europe. It's significantly weakening our ability to jump pad into the Middle East by using Europe, which is really our only corridor in the Middle East. And it's also opening up a window where the Russians might think that a war against Europe might be one just against Europe and not against the United States of America as well, which greatly hedges the odds in our favor if that conflict was to ever happen. So this is another quite ridiculous move by the U.S. government at this point, once again screwing over U.S. strategic interests globally. So, once again, folks, to cover the situation as we have it right now, the Iranians blockaded the Strait of Hormuz, which is causing economic damage at this point because the U.S. was too incompetent to foresee that in the war planning to be able to deal with that. And all of our Middle Eastern allies are already up the creek without a paddle as a result of that. We're starting to look like we're on the fence about selling out Taiwan and possibly cutting off some of our relations with our other East Asian allies as a result as well, because that might become a domino effect of just abandoning East Asia. And also, we are in the process of abandoning Europe by packing up all of our forces and just shipping them on out to leave it open for the Russians. How in the world does this stand to gain us anything in the United States is beyond me. It stands for us to lose everything at the gain of nothing. And at the same time, we'll be more than happy to visit the foreign leaders of our enemies, like the People's Republic of China and Russia, and say that these countries truly respect us and love us, while at the same time they're providing arms and equipment to our enemies to see that U.S. sons and daughters of the Republic and the armed services get killed overseas in wars that we're fighting in our own interests. I couldn't tell you more, folks, at this point, that the foreign policy prerogatives are so rigged against the United States at this point that it is almost, it's to be straight up with y'all, it's almost like we have an enemy that is attempting to destroy the country from within at this point than anything. The Russians and the Chinese could never imagine to do this kind of damage to the United States in any open war, yet we're seeing that these actions are being made willfully by certain people in charge right now for really no actual reason. And some people are saying, well, the U.S. is in decline. Clearly, we have to give it up. No, we don't. You know what happens if the Russians ever went into a war with us? We nuke them. You know what happens if China ever goes into a war with us and we want to die on the hill with Taiwan and Japan? We nuke China. And that stops everything from going any further, because if we nuke China, they nuke us. Both countries don't exist anymore. And therefore, that war is not worth dying on that hill over. Same thing with Russia. So giving up all the stuff acting like we have to because it's inevitable is ridiculous. Because in a modern nuclearized world, none of this is inevitable. We could hold on to it forever, and we could continue to influence these regions indefinitely, and there's nothing that our enemies could do about it unless they want their entire country to be a nuclear wasteland. So moving us on from that, and on into the war in Ukraine, we have been able to hear of some significant developments within this war today. It does appear that the Ukrainian armed forces have conducted another drone attack across the whole of Russia. And we've also seen that some of these drones made it very close to Moscow, which got the Russians to put out a little drone report today, warning everybody about the drones. Geschlägt in die deutschen Wald. Man, I gotta tell you right there. I gotta tell you. I gotta say, folks, I've never seen a drone warning label like this. Mandy's pointed this out before. But it has a very uncanny resemblance to a certain kind of a political group that existed in Germany in the 30s.
It's an awful logo. It's like the red, black, and white. That color scheme is like, there's only one association with that color scheme. And also, by the way, the circle around, I mean, even the geometry is similar. And even the drone, it has four corners to it. So I tell you, it's just we can't get away from the allegations.
Man, I'm telling you, they certainly can. But the drones did not directly hit Moscow. They just skirted right by it towards the north. So the Russians freaked out about the drones just passing by. We did get to see, however, though, folks, we were talking about this over the past few days, the Washington Sarmat car that was T-boned in Sevastopol and disappeared. The group has finally gotten another car, and they made their appearance, speak of the devil, today, outside the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. Let us observe.
9 мая
They've
2026
got
год.
them
Oh,
all
wow.
bleed.
That's a jalopy convention.
Man, they got their big cardboard missiles up on the top bleed.
Посольство США. Кортеж с автомобилей.
Such a peaceful people.
The Russians, they love peace. They love a little piece of Ukraine, and a little piece of Estonia, and Latvia, and Estonia, and a little piece of Finland, and a little piece of Japan, and a little piece of Mongolia, and Kazakhstan, and America, and Britain, and Germany. They love a little piece of everything.
Oh, they put the boat horn on there too.
Man, they got that yacht horn going.
I have a feeling this guy took his entire monthly salary to do this little stunt right here.
I think so. Look at them. They're commie sympathizers. Like, oh, man. It's just so
Us in the United States. I mean, why wouldn't they?
You see, folks, this is a country that truly loves and respects America. They want the U.S. to see their nuclear weapons up close because they love us all so much. They want us to watch the nuclear detonations in our backyard, not to kill us, just to display their power as a sign of respect to us. And, and if a couple of million Americans die in the meantime, that's just a little whoopsies. But definitely, this is a country that respects and loves us dearly.
The crazy part is, these cardboard nukes probably work as good as the real ones.
Oh! Oh, man. They're back, though. Well, it's not really doing them much good around the rest of the country. Today, a Russian air defense missile actually slammed into an apartment building in Razan. Observe. And bada boom. Oppa! Well,
That's not a good thing right there. The Russians have a thing with air defense these days. They're not really sure how to keep it under control, really.
They don't really know how to keep it under control, but, such things happen from time to time in Russia, and all you can do, really, folks, is kind of laugh at it, because, they did the same thing to a couple of Ukrainian apartment buildings about a dozen times over last night, so, kind of a little bit karma, that it happens by their own air defense in their own home country. Unfortunate for them, but moving us on out of Ryazan, we've also been able to see down in Voronezh, that the air raid sirens were sounding. A little drone threat and all. I tell you. You know something, folks? Those Russian missiles, they're kind of like sniffer dogs, They can sniff out a residential apartment building with no military equipment in it from in a split second, and they beeline for them. It's like every Russian missile is designed to do that. They even do that in Russia, which you'd think they wouldn't, yet they do. Mysterious. I wonder why. But a lot of people are currently talking about a little bit of news that we got out of Ukraine today, which I'll have to hop over into really quickly because we're not done with our strike news yet, but we'll make sure to get to this. We have been able to hear that according to the Ukrainian government, they've uncovered some intelligence at this moment and satellite imagery showing Russia is preparing strikes on around 20 decision-making centers across Ukraine. His residence near Kyiv, the presidential administration building, and underground leadership bunkers are among the targets that are listed by the Russians. And it does appear that the Russians are going to largely be attempting to strike Ukrainian decision centers, although the Ukrainians did not strike any Russian decision-making centers during the May 9th parade, which is what the Russians said would have to be the qualification for them to do the same to Ukraine. Now it appears that the Russians are just going to press forward with this regardless. So Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so apparently Zelensky had shown some documents today, apparently from Russian intelligence, that somehow the Ukrainians were able to gather, which appears to show a long list of sites that Russia is preparing to strike inside of Kyiv, including the presidential palace, I think was one of them, also some of the seats of government as well inside the capital city of Ukraine. So it looks like it's a pretty serious claim, and it looks like they have evidence to back it up. So what should happen as a result of this? What should be the response? 55% said Ukraine should reciprocate on Moscow if Russia pulls this off. 27% said NATO should get directly involved because at that point it's getting a little bit out of control. 10% said Russia won't actually do it. And, I'm sort of doubtful that Russia will actually pull this off because remember that Russia likes to put on a big show like they're the almighty powerful Russia, but that's not reality though. Russia is vulnerable, if not more vulnerable, than Ukraine. The only difference is Russia has nukes and Ukraine doesn't. So that's the one thing. But the catch is this though Russia just can't use a nuke off the cuff like that. They could try, but it's going to have some serious consequences. So they're going to put a lot of thought and consideration into it before they simply lob one off. So I would say, I'm going to say that Russia probably won't actually do that because Ukraine 100% has the ability to hit the Kremlin. That's been proven. They have the range and the weapons to do it, and Ukraine has held off from doing that because generally it's considered off limits. But if Russia crosses the line, then Ukraine's going to cross the line, and Russia knows that, and I think they're going to hold off, some with the 9%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would be generally with the 55%. If the Russians try and strike Kiev's top decision-making centers, as much as it would be unfortunate to see some UNESCO World Heritage sites go up in flames like the Kremlin, the Ukrainians would just have to reciprocate on Moscow. And at that point, they could hit quite literally anything. They could hit, just to list a couple of the targets, the Kremlin, the Russian Ministry of Defense building, the actual White House building, which is where the Russian Congress is held. They could hit quite a large variety of government buildings that are within this area and start rendering them to rubble, because the Russians have proven that even their air defense in Moscow isn't entirely capable of stopping these sorts of attacks, and the Ukrainians would well and truly be able to conduct them if they wanted to. So I would say the Russians wouldn't be smart to do this one unless they wanted to see their own governmental buildings burning and in ruins before long. So, Matthew, what type of breaking news do we have coming out at this moment?
So right now we have a breaking news story that just came out. The U.S. has just announced they've assassinated the second highest leader of ISIS globally. The second in command of ISIS has been taken out tonight, it looks like. They're saying his name is Abu Bilal al-Minuki. That's apparently his name. Sounds a lot like Dookie, that last part of the name right there. But apparently he was hiding out in Africa, according to the post here from the president. And it looks like the American Armed Forces actually took him out from the looks of it. So it looks like he was taken out in Nigeria, it looks like. So that's generally what we know right now, but they've taken out the second in command, apparently, right now.
Man, I bet, let's see, he said, second in command, but little did he know he had sources who kept us informed on what he was doing. Man, I bet you they did a little phishing attempt on him, and they told him that that he was actually the descendant of a rich Nigerian prince, and that if he gave his address and also his current location, they'd be able to wire him the money. And he fell for it. And then the airstrike. Maybe. You never know, but that's pretty good news to hear. They got the second in command of ISIS tonight. There's always, they kind of go through these guys kind of quickly these days. I hear that promotion to the head and second to the top of ISIS is generally, pretty common these days.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm waiting to hear, we'll probably get some statement from the president about this. The last time we heard a top terrorist taken out like this, there was the whole, we got the whole, story behind the scenes. That other fellow that got taken out, I think it was al-Baghdadi, I think it was. He was hiding in the trench pipe. He was cowering in the corner crying, and then they took him out, and he cried like what did he say? Cried like a bitch or cried like a baby or something like that in the corner when he went out. So we might get the full story on this one. Right now, not too many details, but that is a pretty big catch for the U.S. forces. They took out the second in command of ISIS.
He was crying like a baby and screaming like a bitch running down that tunnel. He was going, "No, please don't get me. We didn't want to send the dogs in. Those big, beautiful dogs. They have great coats of fur, very shiny. Those dogs will do anything, but we didn't want to send them in. So we sent in the robot with a bomb on it, and it went down the tunnel, down that big, long tunnel. It's one of the biggest you've ever seen. One of the widest, too. It's like Chris's mom, but we sent it down there, and it got him. Blew him to pieces. Really sad, honestly, but it is what it is, and we kind of liked it. It was kind of cool. But anyways, enough of that. Great to hear. We got the second in command of ISIS. They're going to promote another tomorrow, and we'll get that one too. We just keep getting them, left and right. They call me up and they say, sir, they're going out so fast. They're getting knocked out so quickly. We can hardly even update who the hell they are. Yesterday it was Big Baghdadi, and now today it's Bilal Dookie, and we need to find another one. We have to find another one, and we're going to get them. We're going to keep tracking them down. When there's two guys left in ISIS, we'll still be drone striking the head of ISIS, which will be one of the two guys, and then the right-hand man to the head of ISIS, which will be the second guy, because that's what we do. But moving us on out of this breaking news out of Nigeria, it is time for us to get back on and into the wire in Ukraine. Moving us on down in past Voronezh, we did get to hear that Belgorod got hit a couple of times over the course of this day, as we were able to see in this clip right here, which appears to be hitting another power plant within the Belgorod area. We've also been able to see that down near the area of Kaspisk, the Ukrainians were able to land a little hit.
A whole plane.
Oh, bliat! Oh! Oh!
Notice how the cackling fire just came to a sudden abrupt stop once it hit. Also, I didn't see it. I mean, clearly the shots weren't hitting anything. I mean, the thing just like peacefully went straight to the target. And then everybody just went, oh, man, bliat.
Man, look, a hidden Mickey.
A hidden Mickey, eh?
Yeah, see, right there in that smoke plume, there's the head and the 2 ears. It's a hidden Mickey.
It sure is.
Wow, man. Disney's cease and desist attorneys are about to go contact the Russian Navy and be like, we ask you to cease and desist any further depictions or imagery of Mickey Mouse in any sort of way or capacity. But technically, he's now public domain. Well, at least Steamboat Willie is. But let's go back and look at this. You know, that looks like one of those larger light sport planes with a bomb inside of it.
Yeah, I think it is one of those converted small aircraft to a drone.
Oh, that's like a 500-pound bomb going off on whatever boat that was. And we actually got to hear what boat it was. It was the Bouillon! Oh, they blew up the Bouillon with a 500-pound bomb. So, according to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, this was the vessel that was actually hit today in Kaspisk. Apparently, from what we know, the A-22 actually came down on the rear deck of the vessel and exploded into the rear of the superstructure. And the explosion was so strong and, of course, so powerful, it's generally being assumed at this point that the vessel is a complete loss due to the damage that it suffered from the bomb. So, quite a success. The Ukrainians have gotten another corvette. This one was a part of the Caspian Sea flotilla, which is based out of Kaspisk, which helps to provide Russian maritime defense to its vessels in the Caspian Sea. And really quickly, actually, let me show you all that Russian naval mooring down here at Kaspisk, Bliet. Here it is. And here are the vessels. All of them have the Caspian Sea flotilla, Bliet. You can see all of them right here. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You know, generally the whole flotilla's here. Because there's not really a lot of threats in the Caspian Sea. It's a very uneventful place. But moving us on from that, we have also been able to hear, outside of the area of Kaspisk, that up near Stavropol, a chemical plant got blown up. Opa.
That's a pretty big loss right there. You know, those chemical plants are important for several things.
You know, I've heard that they're important for chemicals, but I wouldn't be able to tell you who told me that. Well, probably. Moving aside from that, we also got to hear in the rest of Nondono that there was also an explosion here, which we got a picture of. We didn't get a video of this one, but there was an explosion here, and it is believed at the moment that this may be some sort of an attack on an industrial site within the area of the city. We also got to hear reports from the occupied territories of Ukraine today that the Ukrainians have finally put out footage of their attack on the Berdyansk port and other targets within southern Russia and Crimea. Let us take a look at these clips, which finally let us see some of the damage that they've caused, like to that ship carrying ammo in Berdyansk from what we knew yesterday, and this Berry of 200. There it is. Look at it. I think it looks stupid.
It's a real winner, this plane right here with engines at the top. The Russians just like to do stuff just to be different. Like, they'll put the engines in weird locations just to make it different from Western aircraft. Like on their weapons, like their machine guns, they'll put the mag on the top of the gun just to be different. It's like, it's not really design-wise smart, but they just do it to look different.
Yeah, they do. They do. And that Berry is on fire, burning beautifully. Oh, beautiful.
It is on fire. That is a true statement.
I'm not lying. And now they're about to blow up one of the Leguppies, the counter-rotating propeller hideous abominations of the Russian Air Force and the Army. So they're about to blow one up. The world will be ridded of one of these horrendous abominations of design. And Habadoom. And
they were trying to protect it very closely, too. They had a drone net over it. I'm not sure if a Leguppy is worth protecting like that. I think they could have left that one out in the open without any consequence.
I mean, honestly, you're right. Like, who the hell wants to keep Leguppy around? Those things are hideous. And now they're about to blow up the Tor-2 that was supposed to protect this airfield.
Man, I like that. The Ukrainians added insult to injury. They hit the field first, and then they went back for the shit that was supposed to protect the airbase, and they took that out next.
Man. Zelensky's in the control room going, forget the air defense. It's completely useless. If we have anything to spare, we'll get it second. And then they blew up everything at the airfield, and they're like, okay, now we go for the air defense. Man, the Russian air defense is so bad, the Ukrainians actually get to attack airfields ass backwards. They get to go for the undefended targets first, and then they go for the air defense second. Usually you do it the other way around. And then they also blew up a Panzer S-1 around this airfield. There's a picture of what it would look like in color, and here's an example of it in use by the Russians. And now they're about to blow it up. Opa. And now they're about to start blowing up the Russian ships in Berdyansk. Opa, bliet.
Just taking losses every day, and everybody's like, look, another loss. It's like, this is pretty bad for a country that's allegedly strong and powerful like Russia's made out to be losing stuff like this all the time. I mean, this is pretty bad.
Man, if this was the U.S., that would have required a truth social right there, hitting that one in Berdyansk. We just hit the biggest ship in the world, like it's been blown up by our drones. Over in Ukraine, it literally doesn't even make hardly a headline anymore because it's just kind of expected that this is happening.
It's just a snack. It's just a snack to Ukraine. It's not an entree to them. It's just like the appetizers have arrived. It's like, it's not even the big deal.
Man, truth, really. I mean, that's true. Ongaka. But we've also been able to see that they were hitting other Russian forces in this area. We can see it cooking over there in the corner as they go for a second one. They're going for seconds. That thing is boiling down there. Anybody wanted a seafood ball? Oh man, the Russians be making plenty of those these days. They all a little crabby and boiling in their tanks. So that all adds up. We also got to see a little bit of air defense over the city of Donetsk as well.
Oh!
This got that crispness to the audio, like a good night in Detroit.
They got it in that widescreen Steven Spielberg format too, like where they cut off the top and bottom of the image.
Man, wait, let me pull out my best Werner Herzog. Here we can see that in the city, as the Russians continue to fire at the incoming drones. We wondered why they were doing this, as we never seen it work so far. Yet, still, we've never got an answer from them, and they just shot at these drones, because they don't even know what they are. Man, this be that under air defense fire 4 years into a war and we're losing it ASMR audio clip that they put on a 4-hour loop, like for studying and whatnot.
This is China's best friend right here, by the way, the one that can't defend their skies. China's best buds with them.
Man, right after the president of the U.S. left, Putin said, give me the tea, and then flew down to Beijing. It's like, man, you couldn't make it more clear who's working together in the world against America. Right after the U.S. meeting, Putin's going to fly down and get all of the details from Xi on how it went and how the Russians need to start working their foreign policy based on what China might be able to learn off of the U.S. leadership. So,
yeah. It's also like really like kind of sleazy. It's like the goblin has to go jump right to China right after the U.S. president leaves. It's like, does that not look like kind of like a punk move to a certain degree? It's like, why is he like crawling back to China like right after the U.S. leaves? It's like, what's the logic behind that?
Because they're working together against America.
But you don't have to have like a physical visit for that, though. It's like, Putin just wants to make it clear. He's got to get his roach self all the way down to China just to make it perfectly clear that, look, we're buddies. We're buddies, baby. See, we're friends.
Man, I can't wait for him to go down to Beijing and develop chronic asthma literally 5 seconds after walking out of the plane. He's gonna, next time man, like him from the smog. Oh, man.
I'll tell you what, he's gonna go down there looking all decrepit and haggard, talking about, hello, see, I'm sorry, Winnie the Pooh.
Man, let me see. You know what's interesting? Is that all of these pictures, this one kind of shows it, but a lot of these pictures are like handpicked, not to show the smog. Ah, here we are, a normal smog day in Beijing. How about, let's see. There we go. A little bit more smog in Beijing. These aren't selected by the party. These aren't handpicked.
Man, as Piglet said, this 100-acre woods right here. It needs a little bit of an air filtration system, and I would say, oh, dear,
Oh!
needs a little filter or something. I tell you what, the 100-acre wood is falling on hard times. Winnie the Pooh can't find any honey here. The honey died a long time ago when the bees died off.
Man, if anyone in China sees a bee, they freak out because they've never seen one in their life. They all died like millennia ago. But it's really a shame, folks, because when you look at a lot of historic structures in China, it's like it's kind of a bit of a mixed feeling because China has a very interesting and deep culture. If you could describe them as anything from a Western equivalent, they are they're the Eastern equivalent of the Roman Empire historically. Like they had that much significance and influence in Asia. And yet they're run by a communist government like they are these days that's authoritarian and generally leaves you with basically no respect for their country, although they have such a rich history and a culture to work off of, and yet they have the kind of government that they have. And it's really such a shame because it would be a great country, to be able to go and visit and talk about their culture and history, but then it all has the veil of the Chinese Communist Party over it, so then it's impossible.
Yeah. I just came up with a brand new idea for a fantastic movie. Why don't they come up with a new Winnie the Pooh called Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Pot? But it's like Xi Jinping and a Chinese spy. Like they're sending out. It's Winnie the Pooh's honey pot. It's his blistery day in the 100-acre woods, sending out the spies to America.
Real. Man, that would be great. Go over there, man. And then they go over there.
Honey pot.
Man. Scheme. China and the honeypot. Man, that's like the Princess and the Frog. Xi and the honeypot. Dude, that's a great one. That's
fantastic right there. Toad and Frog together again.
Man, let's see here. Let's see. I got one. Like there's a Dr. Seuss book. Jinping and the Daoji. And it's like Xi Jinping and a honeypot called Daoji. That'd be a good one.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it.
Man, where does this guy come up with his content? It's so damn good. Oh my god.
Yeah, look at that. That's ugly.
Oh, you see some of the smog piercing through the morning sky around here. They really go out of their way, folks, to try and hide the pollution in the country. But then when you go look at the air quality index, it's absolutely the worst in the world. But outside of that, a lot of people currently are talking about some other news that we've gotten out of the war in Ukraine today. And this one's a little bit concerning because the Ukrainians are starting to give this a lot more credence. According to news that Zelensky has reported this morning, Russia is planning potential combat operations from Belarusian territory in two directions. According to the president, Ukrainian intelligence has recorded renewed attempts by Moscow to pressure Alexander Lukashenko into joining new aggressive operations. The possible scenarios include attacks towards the Chernihiv-Kyiv axis in Ukraine or against a NATO member state from Belarusian territory. Right now, a lot of people are talking about this very situation at this moment. And Matthew, what are people thinking about it? And what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so we've heard this from Zelensky before, but they're saying it again, that apparently Russia is preparing to attack Ukraine from Belarus, and that's a little bit different than the last time we heard it, because the last time it sounded like that Belarus themselves were going to directly attack Ukraine, but now it sounds like Belarus might be used as a staging point for Russian forces to once again invade into Ukraine in the northern part of the country. So what are your thoughts? 45% said Russia will be the ones to attack through Belarus, while 26% said Belarus themselves will attack Ukraine. And 20% said, nothing's probably going to happen with this. It probably won't be the way they're making it sound to be. And at this point, I would say the odds of this happening are starting to go up because, once again, like I said, it's not the first time we've heard about this. And it sounds like Belarus, in one way or another, is going to be dragged into the fight. And now that we're seeing NATO forces get taken out of Poland and also the surrounding areas in the Baltic states, that is going to encourage Putin to move and do something more extreme. So that could encourage possibly an actual direct incursion into the Baltics. Or it could be that maybe they try to aggress using Belarus by basically arming and militarizing Belarus to attack Ukraine directly from the north. So I'm going to say I'm with the 45%. It's very, very likely that if anything happens, it'll probably be Russia attacking through Belarus and using their territory because Belarus generally wants to follow Putin's directives. Obviously, Lukashenko really doesn't have a choice, but I don't think they want to use their real military, their personal military, to fight. I think they're going to let the Russians do it on their territory. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would agree. I think it is going to be done through their territory, so I'd also be with the 45%. Also, by the way, folks, not to rabbit hole too much here on the air pollution side of things, but I just found this map, Matthew, called IQAir.com, and I was thinking, let's compare in real time the air pollution over the United States versus the People's Republic of China. Let us see what we find out. Here's America, and that's China.
That is bad.
Man, the worst air quality in the world right now is in Lahore, Pakistan, with an air quality of 447.
That's very bad.
Big breaking news, everybody. Every single person in Lahore is dead. Like that, I don't think you can survive that kind of air quality. But moving us on out of that, it is time for us to get on into the rest of our news. Moving us on and into Kyiv, we did get to see that Kyiv was attacked overnight by the Russian Federation, which we'll be showing y'all a brief clip of right here. We hear the Russian missile coming in and impacting nearby. Additionally, we also were able to see the air defense works of the mobile fire groups in the northern area of Ukraine in this clip right here. And they got it in the first burst.
Very nice. Look at that.
Man, that guy was going on, man. Spell it! Yeah, man. But anyways, moving us on out of that, we also were able to see that within the Sumy direction of some Russian positions were getting hit by the Ukrainians with that techno base running in the background. You can see them here hitting Russian forces left and right with a great deal of efficiency. We see them hitting Russian forces there as well. And
That hit was so bad that it blurred out.
I would agree. Moving us on from that clip, we've also been able to see another one of an ATV assault being repelled. And we see the ATVs making their way through the field right there and about to get hit.
Is this speed up footage, or are they really going that fast?
Yeah, it's sped up a little.
They are hauling ass, by the way. Also, they got way too many people in that one in the back. Like, that's like clown car ATV back there.
Man, that's real. But here in a moment, they're about to start knocking them on out. And we can see the first motorcycle group getting taken out right there. We can see the ATV group in the background trying to figure out what to do, but they're hanging out a little bit too close to the ATV, so that's probably not going to bode them too well here in the near future. But when you see the driver getting back on, I'm not sure if he's going to abandon his pals here. And he might be. He is. He's actually left his two fellas behind. Actually, no. Now he's letting them get back on.
Look at this. He's going to start moving before they even get on the ATV. There they go again. This is an accident waiting to happen. Look at it bouncing around. He's about to fling them all off.
Probably. And we see it getting hit for the first time.
Oh no! There comes another one running up again. Look, he's jumping back on. They're gonna leave the other guy behind, I bet.
Oh, it looks like he's trying to get back up.
Damn.
And now they're all on their way again. Once again, gunning it through the place.
This is awful.
And they're trying to make their way out still. One of them just dropped their helmet. It literally just went bouncing off the ground back there. And now they're pulling up into the tree line. That was only about a quarter mile away from where they started. So definitely not far enough to be away from a Ukrainian drone that's coming in.
They pulled up into the tree line like they just pulled into the heist garage, like it's providing some sort of cover.
Oh, he almost just flipped them all off. Oh my God, he's wheeling it.
Look at this.
Oh my God, they're literally ripping up the soil behind him. Look at him.
Oh my God.
So now they're peeling through the open field. There goes one of them, just fell off.
Dan, they're leaving him.
Oh, and the drone's coming in. We can see it coming on in, and it got him.
Ivan's greed did not pay off. He left his comrade behind and he paid the price.
Tough stuff right there. But moving us on from that and into our location unknowns, we also were able to get the Russian casualty report for the past 24 hours, which according to Ms. Disa, keeper of the records, we were able to hear that the new category is 7 ground robotic complexes tied to the 5th highest daily loss, and 41 cruise missiles is the most in the past 2 months, and tied as the 20th highest. And over the course of the past 24 hours, we have been able to hear that 1,150 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 12 APCs, 185 supply trucks, 4 main battle tanks, 32 artillery pieces, 1,780 drones, 1 MLRS, 41 cruise missiles, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. So all in all, a pretty good day to see. Moving us on towards the front, we also were able to see that the Ukrainians were hitting Russian forces in the 53rd Mechanized Brigade's mortar teams, which we could see here, their shells making their impacts on Russian positions around the Severonsky Forest. And quite a significant amount of hits. They're really laying it down on the Russians. We also were able to hear that the Ukrainians did liberate the town of Dubrova today, just south of the Lyman city area, which is big news to hear. We've also been able to hear that additionally, around the Pokrovsk area, it does appear that the Russian forces have been hit heavily by the 59th Assault Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces as they started to use ambush drones to wait for the Russians to move out of their positions and then strike them when they were the most vulnerable. We now see the ambush drone getting on its way towards the Russians, which are out in the open right here and trying to run from the artillery, and hitting them dead on. Direct hits. And that's seen in the clip right there, but very good to see. We've also been able to additionally see as well that it does appear that there were some significant drone strikes on Russian forces in the Novopavlivka direction over the past 24 hours as well, as a large amount of footage came out of high Russian losses occurring within this area of the front in particular over the course of the day.
Whoa, what the hell? Oh, wait a minute. They're turning on like a thermal or something? I love like the whole forest was on fire.
Oh no, it was like a thermal. It was just a thermal, nothing crazy. We've also been able to see the Russian forces were also getting knocked out by the 46th Brigade within this area as well. We can see this one here, shirtless for some reason, just kind of hanging out. He tried to throw a boot at it. That didn't really turn out too well. We can also see them hitting another group of Russians walking down the street, taking out that one. We can also see this guy laying low. That wasn't a good idea. We can also see this guy here in the middle of the street. It looks like he's doing some sort of a jig and a dance, and we can see why now. Moving us on from that one, we also were able to see them hitting some defensive positions and continuing to knock out more Russian forces around the broader area. Oh, look, this guy got knocked out in the graveyard. Very fitting. But moving us on from this clip, we've also been able to see some other clips as well from this area, including them hitting Russian logistics within this area of the front. Buhankas, very rare Urals, communication systems, the UAZs, the ATVs, a couple of Russians sleeping here and there, you know, another tank, a couple of tanks actually. Quite a nice day for the Ukrainians in the Novopavlivka front. The losses for the Russians were incredibly high. We also were able to see that around the area of Urozhaine, the Russian forces were also getting hit by the Luftwaffe unit. Geschlägt verleiht in die Deutschen! But we can see them here.
Nobody's escaping the allegations.
Man, I'd be honest with you, it's going to be hard for them.
These don't look like Stukas to me.
They look like Shaheeds.
They look like shitheads, блядь. Somebody said Luftwaffe. WTF? Also, by the way, the Luftwaffe is the name of the modern German Air Force too. It's just that the symbolism, associated with this current naming convention of the Luftwaffe, harkens back to a time that I think a lot of people would like to put behind them.
Well, it's just all the symbols that they put up at the end of their videos, for the most part. They kind of give us that idea. Kind of like this
Like
old
these.
Germanic writing.
like these right here. Well, RSNPSD, what the hell does that mean?
I don't know. But moving aside from that, we also get to see in the Wheelapal front that they were also targeting and hitting some Russian forces here as well. And right down into their bunker below. Right into this house, or what's left of it. This outpost as well will get the ire of the drones. This house will be refurbished by the armed forces of Ukraine. This dugout shall be excavated by Ukrainian drone forces. Pardon our progress. We're currently removing Russian dugouts.
Look at that. They've even changed the font on the drone controller thing to look like it's like medieval font on here.
Man, the Ukrainians getting medieval on their asses. Man, they've got to be coming up in some knight's armor here soon with some long swords.
Wait till I swing that axe on that ass.
Who in the hell is swinging an axe?
Well,
Like
he said they're
battle
going
axe?
medieval on them. So, back in the day, they used to swing it around.
Hey, yo!
Man, I don't know what you mean, AO, by that. Like, I'm not
Back
even sure
in the
what
day,
hell
they
that could
used to
possibly mean.
swing it around. Someone clip that. Like, man, clip that. But anyways,
Swing it.
Yeah, swing it around. That's what you said.
It. What's it?
Well, the way you just said it, man, with no context, kind of sus. But moving us on from that, we unfortunately did get to see that the Russians did target and strike a UN convoy today within the Kherson city area, which we saw in this clip right here. And we can actually see
That
that
sound like Houthi propaganda music in the background of those.
I wouldn't doubt it, because the Russians are basically terrorists at this point. But there is the vehicle clearly marked as the United Nations, and they hit it directly on the rear fender right there.
And they were proud of it, too. They were posting as loud and proud.
I gotta say, it's a kind of a barbaric thing to attack UN forces, considering that their rules of these aren't even UN forces; these are actually UN humanitarian groups. Targeting and striking groups like these makes absolutely no sense at all.
Also, by the way, the UN came out today and they said, "Oh, it looks like some random drone hit our car." Even though it's obviously Russia that hit it, they refused to say it was Russia that hit it, which is pretty damn cowardly.
Pretty lame, honestly. But what is there to do about it, really? The UN basically has no way to do anything about it if they wanted to. We also get to see a MiG-29 conducting an air patrol over Odessa. Beautiful. Boy. Moving us on from that clip, it's now time for us to get to the speech from the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, here on this day of 1543 of the news from around the world. And so, when it loads, without further ado, here's the speech. Speech!
Українці, українки, сьогодні вдалося повернути додому 209 наших людей. 205 військових, які були в полоні, більшість з 22-го року, та ще 4 цивільних, які були захоплені в полон росіянами торік на Сумському напрямку. Цей обмін – перший етап з великого погодженого обміну, про який ми домовились в форматі 1000 на 1000. Ми працюємо, щоб були і наступні етапи. Це завжди одна з найкращих та найбільш обнадійливих новин, коли наші люди повертаються додому з полону. Я хочу подякувати посередникам, Сполученим Штатам Америки. Ми говорили з ними напередодні, 9 травня, політичне гарантування, щоб домовленості були реалізовані. Окремо я хочу відзначити усіх наших воїнів, які на фронті своїми сміливими діями забезпечують для України поповнення обмінного фонду. Кожен український підрозділ, який забезпечує цей результат, допомагає повертати людей додому з полону. Сьогодні ж була детальна нарада з нашими розвідками ГУР та зовнішньою розвідкою, Службою безпеки України та Генеральним штабом України. Кілька важливих речей. Звісно, що ми маємо справедливо та відчутно відповідати на всі російські удари по наших містах і селах. Я погодив деякі формати відповідей. Минулої ночі ворог вже бачив влучання, зокрема по їхніх нафтових об'єктах та військових об'єктах. Операції продовжує. Також є хороша робота нашої розвідки. По-перше, чітко розуміємо, що обговорюється між Росією та керівництвом Білорусі. Пішла зараз більша активність росіян. Я маю на увазі в розмові з Олександром Лукашенком. Хочуть значно більше втягнути Білорусь у війну. Та саме з території Білорусі розпочати додаткові агресивні операції або проти нашого Чернігівсько-Київського напрямку, або проти однієї з країн НАТО, які поруч з Білорусі. Звісно, ми будемо і надалі захищати Україну, захищати наших людей, українців. Я доручив нашим силам оборони та безпеки України підготувати план реагування. І на ставці ми розглянемо та затвердимо. Чернігівсько-Київський напрямок ми будемо посилювати. Партнери теж знають, що відбувається і до чого схиляють Білорусь. Є у нас і російські документи, в яких пропонуються цілі для ударів по Києву. Удари по Києву і по інших наших містах, по політичних та військових об'єктах, де може бути керівництво армії, уряд і тут по Банковій. Давно вони виношують цей план. Зараз після Ірану знову активізували, шукають, де ми знаходимось, де ми буваємо, і так само по інших людей з українського керівництва, з розвідки, наших спеціальних служб. Дехто там в Москві так і не зрозумів, що українці ніколи не здадуть свою незалежність в будь-якому випадку на Банковій чи без Банкової. Свою землю, свій суверенітет, свою державу ми не здамо. Ще одне. Сьогодні вранці був на тому місці в Києві, де росіяни знищили будинок. Звичайний будинок, житловий, своєю ракетою Х-101. Фактично знесли під'їзд, 9 поверхів. Рештки ракети знайшли у підвалі будинку. Загинули 24 людини, серед них 3 дитини. Звичайні люди. Вони були просто в себе вдома. На жаль, мої співчуття рідним та близьким. Важливо, щоб світ не мовчав про такі удари. Важливо, щоб підтримка для України зберігалась. Це підтримка не для того, щоб ми забрали чуже. Це підтримка, щоб українці змогли своє захистити, свою свободу, своє життя. Ми обов'язково захистимо Україну. Якими б не були загрози, Україна є і буде. Росія повинна закінчити цю війну. Мир потрібен. Слава Україні!
And
Grom Slava.
And with that,
Also, I want that whale painting that he has back there in the background, that Bayraktar painting back there. That was some pretty colorful artwork back there. I saw some people like saying it looked like something you do when you're on some substances or something, but it looked pretty good. I liked it.
and the Slava. And I would say it was pretty decent looking. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the second segment of the stream where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And I have to say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many people have been here watching over the course of the past hour, and, 2 hours and 25 minutes. Over the course of the stream, we had a peak viewership tonight of about 16,000 people. It was just a little short of it. And we also were able to see that 95,000 people have watched this stream since the start. And I got to say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative of so many people enjoying the stream so far. And I hope that we've been able to give y'all a good service in the news coverage once again. I have to apologize, folks, for going so quickly at the beginning of the stream, because I always get some complaints that the stream lasts a really long time. So I try and pack the news as quickly as I can and kind of belt it out to make it a little bit quicker. But it appears that to some, that isn't the speed of which they desire, which I'm greatly apologizing. I can either go quicker or slower, but the time's really dependent on that one. But nevertheless,
it's just mainly about managing the time. It's like, for example, right now it's 10:30 p.m. That's about 30 minutes overtime. It's not the problem with the news speed. That's not the problem. The problem is I think we're getting too sidetracked too early these days because we're running overtime pretty much every night these days, which starts eating into the questions time too. So that's the thing I think a lot of people are mentioning in the chat, by the way. They're saying that it's starting to get too dense up front, and we should probably save the rabbit holes for the question segment.
well, the problem is, Matthew, is I'm covering 70 news bulletins a night when historically the norm was around 30 to 35 because I'm having to try and pack in so much news today because there's so much going on. So it doesn't really have anything to do with how many rabbit holes we're getting into because that's also a part of the show. It's really more so the amount of news that we're having to cover. And at that point, it is what it is. It's not like we have anything better to do and we're trying to hurry through it. You know, it's the news. I can
Well,
only go
it's
so
just
fast.
it's just yeah, but it's just sustainability though. Like for example, if it goes on for like to 1 o'clock in the morning every morning, it starts eating into the next day, like the amount of sleep we're getting before we get on the air. So we start wearing down. The stream quality starts going down as we're going on too long every single night. So that's the only thing really. But I mean, we are covering a lot more news. I will say that, like, definitely a lot more news. It's just that we probably have to cut down, the rants a little bit, probably at the beginning, so that we don't run too over time. Because we're extending it pretty much every night.
I'm pretty sure we didn't have most any rants at all during the first hour. I think those all came during the second. But what do I know? I'm just only talking here. So with that, it is time for us to get on the questions. So what do we got?
All right, and also you don't have to get offended. I'm just
Well,
providing some criticism.
I'm
But
not getting offended. It's just that, like, just to be entirely honest, it's kind of not really the forum, to just start, typing in the chat complaints about the show. Like, if I ever have a complaint about you
I was
running
actually
something,
responding to somebody. I was responding to somebody mentioning that. So, I'm just addressing what the audience is saying as well. So, just, bringing up points. It's just a point to improve on. But moving on, though, we're not going to get offended. We're just going to take it as, constructive criticism. The next one here goes to 2C2C856, who puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much for that support, good sir, and very generous of you once
hey,
again. They said, where I live is 420 a gallon of gas is unheard of. And they said, I'm not sure where this war is heading, but it's essential that the Strait is open. And I've never spent $104 to fill up my tank until now. And also, by the way, well, I don't know what state is that? Out here in Utah, it's like 450 a gallon where we live out here, and that's just for regular, unleaded. The premium is like almost $5 a gallon, or getting close to it. So it's doubled my fuel cost for sure. So I'm not sure what state you're from, but I believe it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd say it's been getting incredibly expensive. Really tough to even make it financially feasible to be able to drive a car these days. At this point, it's costing me like $70 to fill up the tank, or 80. I think the last time it was actually around 75 or so, somewhere in the middle. But I try and drive as little as I can these days to try and make the gas last as long as possible. And then when I get a tank, I run it basically until the car tells me that it's running out of gas, and then go get gas, just so that way I'm not having to fill up the tank as often and have to be reminded how expensive it is as much as possible. It doesn't really change much of anything, but that's generally how I manage it. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $50 support from Joppy, and thank you very much, Joppy, as well, for that support as always. And Joppy said the petrodollar is why USD is the world's reserve currency, and it means its main purpose is used for the trade of oil, and why the US got so much economic leeway, and the USD is continuing its depreciation due to a lack of confidence, meaning the leeway goes away.
I would generally have to say, unfortunately, I don't really think the concept of the petrodollar is something that I subscribe much to myself, because it's kind of this whole idea that the U.S. dollar is held up by petroleum alone, but the U.S. dollar is used as a reserve currency by 80% of the world, and 80% of the world's economic activity isn't in oil. It's actually monetarily a small amount of the globe's economic activity on the daily. So I would say that generally, I mean, that might be the case to a degree. But I would say that the depreciation is due to a myriad of other factors outside of petroleum that have been leading to the devaluation of the U.S. dollar due to rising inflation and other factors. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And I hope that does address that the best I can, Joppy. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 50 from Don D. And thank you very much, Don D, for that 50 as well. Very generous, just like Joppy threw in, and we do appreciate that. And Don said, when you drink the coffee, I help provide, but some good cigars as well, and enjoy.
And thank you so much for the support, Don D. And thank you so much for the coffee fund. Because the coffee is expensive these days. Like, coffee is absurdly expensive at the store. But I do have to say, humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. Because folks like you help to keep this channel ad-free, sponsor-free, and help us to keep this thing rolling each and every day. So humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 50 from Grand Moff Clubby, and thank you, Grand Moff, as well, for always supporting the channel with that 50 as well tonight. And it said, I may be overthinking this, but I think the president kind of just sold us out without selling us out. And when I saw that post on X while I was on break, I swear my blood started boiling. It feels like the country is being betrayed from within, LOT, LSA, and the empire.
It generally does. Like, there's really no question about that at this point. You can't look at the whole situation these days at all, which is something that I think some people miss a lot and just go, well, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I mean, there's just things that are inherently destructive to the United States. And if people don't like hearing that and recognizing it, then that is what it is. I mean, over the course of 4 years, we've never stated that about most anything. We've always said that it's kind of in the right direction, but it's really not enough. And don't worry, they'll eventually see how things actually work and they'll start working on American prerogatives. But watching someone actively do everything that they can in all three major fronts that we have right now to undermine and degrade U.S. interests in those areas, there's really no other way to look at it than that. And that's what makes it extremely aggravating. And then, of course, some people just don't want to see that at all because, 2 years ago, their guy was saying that China was the worst country on the planet and we never need to be friends with them and we need to decrease our relations with them, which was absolutely true. But now that he's growing relations with China, if you say that that's the wrong thing to do, which would have been correct to those people 2 years ago, now they're going to tell you that you're a demon and an idiot today because you're keeping on the same track of thinking because it's strategically sound. So, not really a lot of leeway to work with those kinds of folks these days. And so we just have to say what we have to say. But a huge thanks to your support.
And also, the U.S. has got to realize that our adversaries are not going to suddenly become our friends. That's a very common misconception, it seems like, right now in foreign policy. The current leadership, I'm not trying to go on a bashing spree, by the way. I'm just simply making an observation about their policy. But they're thinking that somehow we can talk the enemy into coming to our side, which is never going to work, by the way. I mean, there are some countries out there which are naturally rivals with the United States. China is one of them, and they've been working for decades with their Belt and Road Initiative to enslave countries with debt. I mean, they've been literally silently working behind the scenes for a very long time to try to supplant the United States. And Russia, they spent the early part of the 2000s trying to fool all the prior U.S. administrations into thinking that they were friends with the United States. And look how that turned out. You're not going to suddenly convince these people to be friends with the United States. And that's a big problem. Is right now it appears to be they're trying to make concessions, the U.S. is, to China and Russia to somehow make them come to our side.
Yeah, that's true. And there's really no way to get them on our side because ideologically there's just so many differences there and issues. And also the fact that they want to create their own sphere of influence to compete with ours, that just leads to conflicting interests. And there's no way to create any sort of lasting friendships or mutual cooperation with countries like those. But I hope that does address that well. And a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 30 from Crispy, and thank you very much, Crispy, as well, for always throwing in that support right there. Tonight, he threw in a 30, and we do appreciate Crispy very much. He never leaves comments, though. He just puts in the straight-up support, but we do appreciate it. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support, Crispy, and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it rolling. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Andrew Krigbaum, and thank you, Andrew, for that $20 support. He said, to the best two guys ever, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt. And also, thank you, by the way. He said, you guys are amazing, and thank you for the hard work.
And thank you so much for the kind words, Andrew, and thank you for enjoying the hard work and supporting it, so that way we can keep this thing rolling and running day in and day out. So humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 20 from Nightmare Before Christmas. And thank you as well, Mr. Nightmare, for that $20 support. He said, bad times, bad news. Best news channel, though. And can we get a question from the chat and LOC? And honestly, I'm sorry. Like I can tell you on behalf of both of us, we wish we had better news to report. Like we preferred it like before things started going sideways. We preferred it before this right here because as much as people hate to hear bad news, we hate to hear it as well. We're obviously American. We're not rooting for the destruction of the country. Obviously, we want the country to succeed because we literally live here and we're born here. So we don't want it to see it go sideways. And it seems like recently there's been a slew of bad news. So hopefully it turns around soon. So that way we have something positive to report because we definitely want that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, definitely, I wish that we had better news to cover, but news comes out as it is. We always tried for years to kind of soften up bad news if we could by putting the good news first and then getting to the bad news later on in the show. That's generally how we used to do it back in the day because I'm not really a big fan, and it would be hard to see that nowadays because of how the news keeps coming out and how we just have to keep reporting it. I'm not really a big fan of bad news. I actually don't like it. It gets me frustrated when I hear of bad news and then when we have to report on it. Because when we report on it, especially on my end, I have to sit down and actually think about it in depth on air and verbally state why it's bad and how it's going to turn out. And that's very frustrating to me because there's very clear actions that could easily be made that would keep us either in a neutral position or a positive position on most topics, and somehow they keep making the most negative decisions as far as what we're seeing right now. So I'd have to say, I thank you so much for enjoying our news coverage on it nonetheless, but I wish we did have better news to cover, but I hate to tell y'all folks, I don't mean to be a pessimist these days, but after watching this for a year and 4 months, I've got pretty decent pattern recognition and I start working off of trends. There's really no positive news that comes out these days by and large rather than the war in Ukraine. Like the war in Ukraine is the only thing that I see where we have like positive stories to cover, and even then there's not some good news coming out of Ukraine. But most of the other stories around the world are generally just negative, which is just extremely infuriating because you would think there would eventually be something that's done that would actually be in America's interest and we'd be able to see this is good news, and yet there's none. It's just really weird. But a huge thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well, and we will make sure to get one from the chat. So Matthew, what do we got?
So the live chat question is going to go to none other than Judy from the live chat, who said, if you both had to say, how long do you think the Iran-U.S. war will last? Yeah, that's a tough one. Basically, it's going to last as long as it takes to get the Strait of Hormuz open. At least it should last that long. Technically speaking, if we get the Strait of Hormuz reopened and we have control of it, then technically we could walk away from the situation without too much damage happening. But I mean, that's still not a great situation. But technically, at that point, we could walk away if we wanted to. But to walk away right now while the Strait's closed, that would be insanity, to say the least. Because literally, we will have had a net negative at that point. We'll have started the war and then been in a worse situation than before the war started at that point. But Enforcer, what say you?
Can you reread that question again?
You have the spreadsheet open, don't you?
Yeah, but I don't know which one you were on.
It's the one from Judy from the live chat.
Got you. So I would say that the war will probably last at the longest maybe 6 months or so. That's what I would assume because, well, in the best case scenario, because we would have to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and then conduct convoy duties under fire for a good while. And once we were able to clear that out to make that a possibility, which would probably take a month at this point, and then for the next 5 months there would be limited fire, we'd eventually grind the Iranians down to where they give up. But that's in the best case scenario. I don't really think that we're going to be seeing a best case scenario in this situation right now because even with the alleged warplanes that are coming out, none of them directly confront and deal with the situation inside of the Strait of Hormuz. So I hope that does address it the best I can. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Truckin' Chef, and thank you, Truckin' Chef, as well, for that $20 support. He said, good evening, Enforcers. It sounds weird, but could the U.S. just use dummy bombs to explode the mines in the Strait of Hormuz, and also use an underwater drone to tow some buoys behind with the drone, with something sticking down 20 to 30 feet to explode them?
Generally, it would be pretty tough to do that. You could locate the mines and try and destroy them with conventional explosives, which might work. But the problem with that is the air defense situation in that sort of an environment, which may not be the best for those types of aircraft that would be dropping the dumb bombs, but it's definitely not out of the question. That's actually an idea that could be done. But also there's some other issues with it as well. For example, the hydraulic pressure of the bomb hitting the water. If it's falling from a great height at a high rate of speed and it hits the water is generally going to act like concrete, and if the mine is a good bit down, we could see that the explosion doesn't actually reach the mine and destroy it. It might just damage it, but not to any degree that renders it inoperable. So we might actually have to go and physically get to the mine with a fiberglass minesweeper or a wood-hulled minesweeper, and then try and get to the mine, pull it out of the water to some degree, and then actively demine it or detonate it from a safe distance through those more conventional measures. But there's more than one way to skin a cat, as the old saying goes, and that certainly is one way that you could try and knock them out, but I haven't really heard of a lot of people doing that historically to be able to try and demine fields, so the efficacy of that kind of a tactic would be in question, but it might be doable. The underwater drones, however, they really can only detect the mines, and that's really about it, and they're actually quite small. I mean, they're very small drones, so I don't even think they'd be able to carry explosives or buoys, say, with explosives on them any distance, because their propulsion capabilities are unknown, like their top speed and the kind of power that their motors have, and they might be too low power to actually deal with carrying anything more than their own weight. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Tyler Kerr. And thank you very much, Tyler, for that $20 support. And I was double checking. It does not look like he left a comment, but I was going back to take a quick look real quick. And it looks like it was just straight up support. But nonetheless, Tyler, we do appreciate it very much. And of course, you're helping to keep the channel running. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, Tyler, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Truck and Chef who said, sorry, I did not say any of that right. Can the U.S. just load up something that weighs enough to sink at least 40 feet in the water, and it does not matter what it is, and just use a grid pattern to drop those projectiles maybe?
You could
What's the trigger? What's the trigger for those things right there? Is it contact or is it electromagnetic? What sets the mine off?
It's magnetic and acoustic. So if there's a steel hole that passes by, it'll actually be attracted to it, even from a distance, and it'll be able to just kind of like float unpowered to the hull and then cling to it. Or they're actually acoustically driven. So if they hear any sort of a sound like a propeller or the sound of whooshing water around them, they can actually gravitate towards that sound and then cling on to whatever it touches.
Interesting. So if you drop something in like Truck and Chef was talking about, that's not going to set it off necessarily?
Not necessarily. What he's saying, I think, is that you have to drop the bombs in a grid. So, at like the intersection of every grid point, drop a bomb there and then see if it takes it out. The problem with that is that is doable, actually. And in theory, you could drop enough bombs to eventually just demine the Strait through raw explosives. But it would be woefully inefficient in terms of ordnance use, because per the percentage rate of bombs dropped versus mines detonated, it might be very low. So you might have to drop something like 100 Mark 82s to eventually get one Maham 3. And at that point, that's becoming very inefficient in terms of cost efficacy to be able to deal with it. And so then you would have to go back to something that's a lot more cost efficient, like sending in a minesweeper to literally just go bebopping in the minefield and see if they can physically find anywhere, and then try and untether them, bring them up to the surface, and physically demine them or detonate them at that point once they find them, because that's a lot more efficient at that point economically. Now, that's definitely not out of the question. Like, I do want to say this, that is actually a pretty decent idea if you had an unlimited number of bombs, but unfortunately we do not have an unlimited number of bombs, nor do we have a large enough production capacity right now to really make that doable. So you would have to go through and find a cheaper and more active method of finding them and then individually destroying each of them. But still, it's a pretty decent idea, actually. And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Truck and Chef, and helping this channel to keep it running. And I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And moving into our next one, I'll grab one more thing here from the spreadsheet to add it to it. Moving on to our next super chat. This one, excuse me, is going to go to Music Uploader while I choke through this. But thank you very much, Music Uploader, for that $20 support. He said, China, Iran, Taiwan, Kurds. It's become quite clear. This dude eats corn the long way. Ayo.
What?
Say, what does this mean? I don't know. Is this I don't know. It could mean exactly what it says. Wait a minute, hold on a second.
Corn the long way.
I don't know what that could possibly mean. Is there any other way to eat it? There's no like short way to eat it.
Hold on, let me pull this up on the
That
side.
sounds that sounded worse.
Corn the long way. Meaning is a popular crude slang expression that implies. Oh.
What does it mean? Out with it.
How do I say it? Monica Lewinsky! Monica Lewinsky is what he's trying to say. That's what.
Oh, no. Okay, I just got it. I Googled it. I Googled it. Don't do that. Don't do that.
No. No.
Oh, no.
I did the great misfortune of Googling that on
no.
the side screen. That's why I was so quiet, man. I was kind of like shocked by what I just saw. I was like, oh my God. I was like,
damn.
Bruh. We just read that on air.
What the world? What in the world, man? Like, I've never seen this before. This is something different right here. If I had seen something like this before, that might be a point of concern. Okay.
Can we just have a minute to like gather ourselves before we move on? No, you didn't have to do that for it. You didn't have to do that for it. I mean, like, we just have to have a moment here. We just have to have a moment, folks. We have to have a moment here. We have to have a moment, just a tad, a second or two to process that. I'd have to say, I thank you for the support, music uploader, and helping this channel to keep it running. Unfortunately, though, I think I'm going to have to refrain from comment on that one. But Matthew, do you have any final words you would like to say to the super chat here?
So, I mean, where do we start? Where do we start? I mean, technically, I'm not sure if he's ever had corn on the cob, any type of way. No nasty intended. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this would be even something applicable. I don't really have anything to say, to be honest with you. I don't really have a word.
You know, just to get us on a side note, what's in the Treasury building? I wonder, just to completely move on from this. What is inside the Treasury building? I've never seen a picture from in there. Have you?
No, I don't. You're not about to pull up a picture of a dude alongside way eating the corn, are you?
Hell no. Hell no. Man, no. No. Nah, I'm good. But, you know, I just wonder what's in the Treasury building. Maybe it's in this one here. Do they really have no pictures of the inside of the Treasury building? They don't. I don't see a single one here on Google that shows the inside of this building. Huh. That's crazy. Anyways, what were we on again? Oh yeah, music uploader super chat. Well, I do thank you greatly for the support. Now, I thank you for your vote. We'll be trying to make it to the White House in 2040. So a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Ron Fannin. And thank you very much, Ron, for that $20 support. And they said, take one from the live chat in LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Ron, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And so long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the live chat question is going to go to Kraken, who said, if we don't try to reopen the Strait, what do you think are the best and the worst outcomes? Honestly, it's as simple as this. If they don't try to reopen the Strait, what's the best outcome? The best outcome is people are still able to afford food in America. The worst case outcome is the entire global economy collapses. It's literally that extreme. It could go one way or it could go another way. Honestly, none of those options are good. There's really no best case outcome if we don't try to reopen the Strait. The only way to go is to try to reopen it or fail trying. That's basically it. But Enforcer, what say you?
The best possible outcome of not reopening the Strait is that we're in a major global recession. The worst possible outcome is we're in a global depression, like the Great Depression, once over, which I don't think anybody in the modern world even has a concept of how bad that one was, because nobody really had to live through it. But it's pretty bad. Believe me, from a historical perspective, it was horrendous to live through. Anywhere in the world, for that matter. Only place that really wasn't affected was the Soviet Union. Now, if we militarily try and reopen the Strait, the best case scenario is that the Strait's reopen, and while we do go into a light economic recession, it is not going to be that bad and we will recover. In the worst case scenario, we somehow are militarily not able to reopen the Strait, and then we once again go back basically to the first question, which is, what if we don't open the Strait? At best case scenario, major economic recession. Worst case scenario, major economic global depression. So generally, gaming that out, the only option we have is to militarily reopen the Strait and hope that we can open it, which we can. I mean, that's not going to be too hard. We can open it with enough elbow grease. But that's generally our situation in the moment, in the impasse that we're at right now. So I hope that does address that the best we can, Ron. And a big thanks to you for sponsoring our live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Robert Betancourt, and thank you, Robert, for that $20 support as well. He said action will happen this weekend as people are voting, and the U.S. can declare martial law because of sleeper cells. I don't know. Like, you know, that sounds rather extreme right there. Now, action might happen this weekend. That's a part right there that could happen. But the whole martial law thing, I think that we're probably okay. But Enforcer, what say you?
We'll probably be fine. That probably wouldn't be too popular on the home front to do, so that would kind of limit that to a degree. Because we do have to remember, folks, that you know, not to make like this isn't a political comment, but this does have a factor in the decisions. The midterms are coming up. I mean, really haven't seen that affect any decision making so far, but they are coming up. So generally that would stop people from making incredibly rash actions that would be looked at wildly unpopular by the U.S. public and might change how people vote. So I would say, I doubt it on that one, but I'd have a feeling that strikes are coming up soon at some point. It's just that we don't know when. So a big thanks to your support and help this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from that mom, and thank you, that mom, for that $20 support, and we do appreciate it. And they said, watch yesterday's stream today and go buy some meat, Enforcer. I have no idea how much it costs now because I'm a vegetarian, but hopefully $20 covers it. Maybe. But and call your family. You never know how long you'll have them.
And thank you so much for the support of that, Mom. And I think that was to my comment yesterday that I haven't bought meat from the store in years because it's so expensive, it's unaffordable. I would buy some, but it's just that at this point, if I ever want to eat anything that's got meat in it, I just go buy it from a restaurant because that's actually the way to get the meat cheaper and more economically is from the restaurants because somehow they still are able to get their meat at a cheaper price and put it into their meals pre-cooked and stuff. And sadly, also on top of that, even if I wanted to get meat to cook, I can't really even cook. We just don't really have a lot of time for that. Either of us do. I think Matthew cooks spaghetti from time to time, but I don't really cook anything for that matter because this thing takes up a lot of time to prepare and then also run just like a block out of the day. It's not really something that I can like passively do. Like I can't set up the show and then also just like be in the kitchen cooking. I mean, this is like on my end, I have to like legitimately sit down at a desk and get going at this thing these days because of the thumbnails. Like the thumbnails for reasons known have become a lot longer in the amount of time that it takes to make them. Usually it takes like 30 to 40 minutes to make anywhere in between one thumbnail to 3 or 4 of them these days. So I have to sit down and start getting to work over here at like 5 in the afternoon or 5:15 or so, and then I start working from then all the way up until showtime at 8 local time here, and now it's 10:54 here, so y'all can already see that my day just running the show has been like 6 hours long at this point. And we're nowhere close to the end of it, by the way. It's still going to be going probably for another hour. So, that goes on every single day, as it is. So, unfortunately, I just don't really have a lot of time to cook, even if I wanted to. But hopefully I can get some.
All you got to do is cook in a big pot. You just got to cook in a big pot, or you can make pasta with the tomato sauce. I mean, you can do anything. I used to meal prep like a little while, but it got so time consuming because I tried doing the thing where you like make the stuff like on one day, like on a Monday or something, and then you just sort of eat it throughout the rest of the week. But the only problem with that is with all that food sitting in the refrigerator, it becomes a lot more accessible. So I tend to overeat then at that point. So then I start going through my food supply a lot faster. So it's like a double-edged sword. You can make a big pot of something like a big pot of chili or like a pasta with a tomato sauce or something like that, but you tend to go through it pretty fast. Also, like I was making spaghetti with no sauce. It was just like straight up, what do they call that stuff out of the can.
Give me that macaroni and gravy.
Yeah, I wouldn't even put any gravy on it.
Gravy. Tomato sauce. Man, man, you were just cooking up the noodles?
Well, yeah, I was putting some butter on it, but that doesn't have hardly any calories, I found out. So I was like, dang, this isn't really like doing the trick. That's because I didn't have any calories. I mean, best case scenario with spaghetti, you put the pasta in there, you cook it up, you put a jar of that like tomato sauce on it, and then you put a protein in there, some sort of like Polish kielbasa or something like that to like add some protein and stuff to it. But yeah, you gotta add some substance to it. Just eating the noodles alone, you're gonna be screwed.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it probably would be. I mean, there's not really a lot of caloric content in noodles. But
That's what ramen is, though. Some people live off of that.
Well, yeah, but they got meat in ramen. I mean, they always have meat in ramen to some extent.
Barely.
Well, not like
That
instant
broth,
ramen, like
really.
real ramen.
I mean, technically, yeah. I mean, technically, real ramen, but I mean, the stuff that most people get, like the little like instant cup of noodle or whatever that's called, that ramen company, I forgot the name of it. The one that's in Walmart by the huge shelf load, that's like 99 cents. Most of those don't even really have meat.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. But I mean, then again, those are like 99-cent instant ramen things. So, I mean, they wouldn't have meat. That would just be unaffordable to make it at that price with meat in it. But also, I saw some folks talking about the thumbnail stuff because a lot of people always have like comments about the thumbnails. Why do y'all use himeni in it? Why don't y'all do this? Why don't y'all do that? There's a lot of practical reasons why we don't do a lot of things with thumbnails that a lot of people would recommend. But to show y'all a little bit of how thumbnails work, like tonight's thumbnail, this is something that's actually fairly interesting on how thumbnail creation works, is that this thumbnail that ran on air tonight is actually 5 different thumbnails on the same thumbnail. It's just that y'all can't see the prior iterations here. Because how I do it every night is that every night is a new project, and I literally just layer all of my images on top of one another. So if I take this and move it over here, and then move that, and then move this, you can actually see the picture that came before it. And then if I move these out of the way, you can actually see the picture that came before that even right there. And I've got like 5 different iterations of thumbnails that I do every single night. Or more so, usually it's 3 to 4. Sometimes though, it's really hard to make a thumbnail, like it's impossible on the topic, because all of them have to look different every day. We have to have something that looks new. And I know there's some people out there who will literally put a picture of Putin up, and then they'll put like a sickle and hammer on his lapel, and then put like a chat box up, and they've done that for like 1,600 days. But we actually have to do something different each day. Like, you know, like the rule is simple. There's a main image that takes up 2/3 of the screen. There's the face of whoever is the top topic of the day in the corner. It's always an adversary of the United States for the most part. Sometimes an ally, but that's usually rare. And then some sort of an explosion in the background to kind of bring emphasis to this person who's over here on the foreground, either to the right or the left. And those are the rules of how our thumbnails are made. And the top 2 rules of their design is that they have to be easily recognizable, and they have to be either indicating action, and they also have to have color, or one or the two. It doesn't have to have both, it just has to have one of those 2 rules. And that's how our thumbnails are made every day. And then it has to have 2 words, 3 is pushing it, 2 is the optimal amount, and the words have to be somewhat short so that way they can be bold and easily seen. And those are basically all the rules that go into thumbnail creation every day.
Man, you're like a magician giving away the secrets here, man. Don't give them too much of a lesson.
Well, I mean, you know, it's not like anyone's just going to go and start, you know, imitating these out of the blue. And also on top of that, it's kind of like trade. It's kind of like tradecraft. Like even if you got Coca-Cola's secret formula, which isn't copyright or, you know, patented or anything, it's not like you could go and just start ripping off Coca-Cola. You know, it's like everyone's going to know it's a ripoff.
Oh, you can't rip off Coca-Cola because you can't put the cocaine back in. That's not legal.
Oh yeah, yeah, you're right. Like actually, yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I mean, on this stuff right here, I mean, this is it took us a while to perfect these thumbnail formats right here. It's a science behind it. We won't get into the science behind it. We don't want to give people too much information about all this stuff right there. But there's a science behind getting people to like dark their eyes over to the thumbnail, which is the whole point of a thumbnail, by the way. The title tells them what it's about. The thumbnail simply grabs his eyeballs to put them on the title.
But to answer some questions, because I saw some people say, why do y'all keep using Himini? The simple answer is he's recognizable, and there's a million different pictures of him. That's just the easy answer. Nobody knows who the hell Mujtaba is, and to be entirely honest with y'all, Himini died so quick that they're really, like, there's no way to just go, this guy died, here's the new guy, and everybody's just gonna be like, oh yeah, that's old Mujtaba, I know him. Like, everybody knows this guy, so when we show him, people are going to show up. It's kind of like how most World War II thumbnails always put either Stalin or Hitler on it, because some people might not know who FDR is for some weird reason, or they put Churchill on it because those are the recognizable faces of the Second World War. You'll very rarely see Bernard Montgomery or anyone else because people don't really know him that much, because you're trying to make sure that people get the gist. So that's why Himini shows up in basically every thumbnail these days, and that's also why we use certain images as well, is because they're more catchy looking. Like, you know, like we could get an image that's like 480p that has no pixels at all that would actually be from the situation that happens, but we have to come up with something that gets the gist across of what it is and also does it in a way that's very stylish and good looking. So I hope that does address that to some folks well who ask questions about the thumbnails, because I saw a couple come in after I said it takes 30 to 40 minutes. But these things take a damn long time for me to make every day these days. Like this is about a third of the time that I spend before a show getting a show ready these days is just on thumbnails. And we usually I come up with 4 to 3 of them a day for the most of the time. And out of those 3 to 4, only one of them will be chosen to be used, or none of them might be chosen to be used. So,
Make them too.
Huh?
I make them too.
Well, yeah, that's why I was saying, you know, like sometimes none of mine get used, because, you know, there might be a better one out there that's yours. And then also another thing that we don't tell folks is that there's actually a focus group that we sometimes run them by before the show. Like literally like 20 minutes before the show goes live, we'll have like 5 people in a call, and we throw all of these in, and then they vote on it. And whichever one gets the most votes is usually the one we use. Like there's a whole process that goes into thumbnail creation that takes forever. So just getting all back around to the beginning. That's why sometimes I just don't have a lot of time to cook, because I got to legitimately sit down and work on the stuff nonstop once it starts each day, and that cuts out a lot of time. But a big thanks to you for support, and I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Yeah, these days it's like a huge process to making thumbnails. Like I'll make some, and Andrew will make some of them. Sometimes we go with his, sometimes we go with mine. It's a whole process. Also for the videos too, we make separate ones for videos that are different. So between the two of us, we perfected the thumbnail format over time. There was like 2 years ago, we were doing a certain thumbnail format, but I did a little bit of research into the psychology behind thumbnails and added a couple of different tweaks to it. And I won't say what those tweaks are, as I don't want to give that part away. Unfortunately, didn't give that part away in the explanation a minute ago. But there's a couple of things that generally, it's like psychologically, get people's eyes to dart over to certain stuff. And there's just a science behind. There actually is a science. It's actually not BS, like just marketing talk. There is actually something behind that. And some YouTubers have figured it out. Some of the big ones have, and we've kind of gotten the format, but you got to still keep it fresh a little bit, even with that, because you don't want to get stale with your thumbnails. But moving into our next one here, this one goes to Joppy, who puts in the 20. And thank you very much, Joppy, for that $20 support. And they said, I sent you an email earlier that TSMC isn't the pipeline of chips per se, it's that it is the generations ahead of latest and future generations of semiconductors. And so if all's, then the world's tech development comes to a halt.
And I thank you so much for the support, Joppy. But the thing about that is that if TSMC is producing the latest and future generations of semiconductors, then they are basically the thing. Because industry works around having the most advanced of something available to be able to get ahead. That's how we beat the Soviet Union in the Cold War, is that they hardly looked into computation technology at all, and by the end of the Cold War, we were eons ahead of them in computational technology. The Soviet Union had computers, but they were basically still working off of, I think it was the vacuum tubes of the 50s in the 80s. And so our computational capabilities were well more advanced than theirs, and we were able to beat them industrially and economically as a result, by increasing the labor output of an individual worker, because the computer was rapidly speeding up the work that would take them days to do, and it was doing it in minutes. So I would generally say that is true, that they aren't the entire semiconductor producer of the world, but if they're producing the highest quality stuff, then we definitely don't want that falling into enemy hands where they control that sort of technology and production process. But a big thanks to you for support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a super chat from Joppy once again, and thank you, Joppy, for the second support. He said, to shed some light on this doom and gloom about Taiwan, the U.S. aren't the only ones that pledge support for Taiwan, though apparently the U.S. has a crush on autocracies instead of other democracies, so no more U.S. pledge. Yeah, but my thing is, though, the U.S. pledge is the most important one. With the U.S. behind Taiwan, China is going to be up for a challenge, to say the least. The other countries that give Taiwan aid, that's not really a deterrent, in my opinion, for China, because China has a strong military. Like, that's not a joke. They have a strong military. And Taiwan, even though it'd be geographically hard to amphibiously land on the island just because of geography, they could still be a big problem because China possesses a whole bunch of drones, and Taiwan might struggle with that. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that generally the U.S. is really the only major supporter of Taiwan. There really isn't anyone else who supports Taiwan or even recognizes them, for that matter. Because if you look at Taiwan's armed forces, it's either all indigenously produced equipment or it's American-produced equipment. So none of Taiwan's other supporters are even significant enough to provide them with arms for the larger part. So then that means that if it's not the U.S., then basically nobody's supporting them at that point. Because Taiwan isn't in a position like Ukraine, where Ukraine has a lot of international support in Europe and elsewhere. Taiwan is basically on its own, and China's done pretty well in the United Front policy of their non-war military activities to alienate and isolate Taiwan from the international world and most connections with other governments in any official extent. So a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also just got a very generous support from Ryan C. 4451. He put in a 100 Canadian, all the way from Canada, by the way. And thank you very much, Ryan, for that very generous support. And of course, we love our Canadian viewers. We have a lot of Canadian viewers in here. In fact, I would say a good chunk of the people that support the channel are actually Canadian viewers as a whole, which is kind of interesting, by the way. So, of course, we love Canada, as always. But thank you very much, Ryan, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, a humongous thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And I got to say that we're entirely appreciative and incredibly honored to know that so many people from the amazing nation of Canada continue to watch this show. They watch it all the time from places like Winnipeg, right here. Let's take a look at the town of Winnipeg. Is it a nice place? It is a nice place. Actually, this is really nice. I like this place, really. It's got a nice early 20th century kind of a style to it. And it's clean. Honestly, man, this looks like Birmingham, Alabama if it was actually well kept up and clean.
It does. It really does, honestly. If only the West could meet the standards of Shenzhen, China. If only we could reach that level of smog.
In smog we trust. Amen. I mean, what's that?
You know what's the base root word of smog?
Fog.
Moggin. That's what the base word is. M-O-G. I mean, you got a mog on them, smog on them.
Make smog great again. We need toxic smog with lead in it. We need to breathe in the lead. Like General Sun Tzu's The Art of War, Chapter 3, Traveling Over Smog. Rule 12 says, those who suck lead in with each breath have iron lungs within them and lead in their eyes. Great thing. But anyways, I gotta say, Canada is actually a really nice place. Interestingly so, because you wouldn't think that a place like Winnipeg, which we've never really heard of, looks that nice. But let's look at another, Matthew. Pick a larger Canadian town out here in the far frontier.
Zoom in so I can get some ideas.
We're looking for kind of a bigger one.
Take me to La Rogue.
Where's that?
That's up at the top part.
Oh, La Ronge.
Oh, La Ronge?
Yeah, that's La Ronge.
That's what the foreign policy is right now. It's a La Ronge.
Oh, man, that's actually a pretty good one. Let's see here. Let's drop down on this B. This looks like a rural American town. Huh?
This is looking a little right.
Man, this ain't looking bad. Like this ain't bad. This is good. I mean, this isn't too bad, really. It's just kind of like a country town. Like, you know, like this is what you would expect from like a rural Canadian sort of a town. Oh, let's pick a bigger one, like Edmonton. Let's go look at this one. Wow, this actually looks like it has skyscrapers in it. So we might be shocked. Wow, this is like super nice.
Dang, look at that. City Market right there on the right, and parking. They're very much into large signage here. I appreciate that. It makes it a lot easier to read if you're kind of halfway blind.
You know, for some people to be saying that Canada's going to hell in a handbasket, I mean, this place is pretty clean and modern looking.
Honestly, and look at that. They even put hotel like very large letters on the side. I appreciate that a lot. Like, you cannot be blind and also oblivious here. You have to see everything. But honestly, it's not too bad looking. I will say it's kind of a little bit bland, but I mean, other than that, I mean, it's just like a normal city, but it looks pretty clean though.
Oh my God, it's Canadian National. Is that their headquarters? That's the Canadian State Railway, by the way.
I thought it said CNN.
No, that says CN for Canadian National. Do you know what Canadian National looks like?
Like the National Canadian?
Like the National Railway of Canada, like, you know what they got those trains with the red front and the like worm logo on the side. I honestly think they look cool. Like, I like their paint job.
They have the big booty worm as their mascot.
Man, they got that big booty worm. Man, it's out there throwing it down. But man, Canadian National has a really cool paint job. I've actually saw a couple of these in Birmingham before we moved, like 3 of them or so.
Yeah, I think I saw some too.
Are you sure?
I could have sworn I saw it. I could have sworn.
I don't think you did. I think you saw Canadian Pacific, because I only saw the 3 of them in the middle of the night at like 1 in the morning. So, you know, I don't think you were there for that one. But Canadian National does have a really cool like logo. But outside of that, what does the burbs look like? I'm interested in Canadian cities because I didn't know that these out here look this nice. Okay, so this is like a back alley. I need to get on an actual street. Okay, so here's it. Oh, wow, this is actually like pretty nice.
Oh, look, it's one of those Edward Martin Graham houses or whatever. What's that dude's name that did the Falling Water house?
Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yeah, Frank Lloyd Wright.
Bruh,
What the hell did I say?
Edmund Water, junk barreled or something. I was like, "The hell do you mean?" I was like, "What is that?"
But yeah, it's like that type of design, like that modern, like contemporary look. This is one of those neighborhoods right here, like tearing down old houses and building like really expensive new ones in the midst of like older ones. I don't know how I feel about that. Is that called gentrification?
Yes, it is. Like it is gentrification. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the houses look nice, but they're putting in the middle of a neighborhood that has the older homes in it. So I don't know what that's doing to the values.
They'll probably end up replacing all of them with stuff that looks like this. Honestly, it doesn't look bad. I mean, it looks pretty nice. It's got that millennial grayscale thing going to it, though, which is kind of a little bit unfortunate because I don't know what it is, folks, about millennials, but whenever they buy an old house, they're like, make everything gray. Like I've seen.
Man, they're building those soul sucker houses, the ones that you just walk into and it's like sucks your soul out. Like it's just like commie gray. It's got like exposed concrete like on the floor and the ceiling. There's no like ceiling to it. It's just like straight up like ducting and venting and like it's exposed.
Like you're living in a
Honestly,
damn Victorian factory. Like you look up and see all the ducting and shit.
they took away features and said this is modern. It's like, no, I want all this stuff back.
Like honestly, like I like houses that, to be frank, are colorful, kind of like that, or some, at least a few of them stuck in every once in a while, instead of everything being gray. Because the grayscale thing was cool when it first came around, but I feel like it's really worn itself out in terms of like what's in vogue pretty quickly. Because once you see like your 9,000th house that's a grayscale and it's either white, gray, or black, and those are the only paint jobs they use, it gets very exhausting to look at them like that over and over. But I mean, they don't look bad though. I mean, it's just that it'd be nice to have some variety of color up in there. Like a blue house or a red house or like a light green one every once in a while. Just to kind of shake it up a little. But outside of that though, I mean, Canada is a really nice looking place, and I got to say a huge thanks to you for support, Ryan C, and being one of our Canadian viewers, and also being one of our Canadian viewers. An incredible thing to know that we have friends up in Canada, because the U.S. loves Canada, and we view you all as great allies. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Imperial Girl. And thank you very much, Imperial Girl, for that $20 support. They said, my grandma was a Depression era, and she drilled into us as kids, use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without.
And that's true right there. Like a lot of, like, I knew some people when I was a kid, of course, they were like in their 90s by that point, that lived during the Great Depression, and they said it was not a great time. And generally I stick by that, because if it's so bad that you're in your 90s and you actually like reel in your facial expression, you're like, oh, it was horrible. It must have been pretty bad. Because, they went through the Second World War right afterwards. And a lot of these people that I talked to about that, they were drafted into the Second World War and actually fought the Germans, and were like talking about, oh, you don't forget the smell of like bloating, rotting corpses in the summer heat. Like that'll stick with you. And then even still, that wasn't as bad as the Great Depression, like from what their facial expression indicates. And that's got to be pretty bad. And that's why, like whenever anyone's like, oh, everybody just needs to go through a depression to understand suffering, I'm like, not really. Like, I'm like, generally, I think these people are so detached from reality, they don't even understand what they're asking for. But, it's always...
I don't know anybody these days that is like, me personally, like I'm right now, like for example, my car is going 11 or 12 years old. I plan on running that thing into the ground. Like I find no shame in saying that either. Not buying a new vehicle, not buying a used vehicle, not buying any vehicle. I'll run the vehicle I've got into the ground. And then if something happens to that, I'll probably just use a bicycle or something like that in the meantime, because I refuse to pay these inflated prices that are out there. Also, unfortunately for us, for the prospects of buying a house, we can either pay these inflated rates right now that they're charging for houses, or we can try to wait until there's a housing crash. It's probably going to be inevitable at this point, and try to see if we can get a house at a decent rate when there's a housing crash. So that's the risk right now. If you go get a mortgage for something at this inflated rate and all of a sudden there is a crash, then your mortgage is going to be underwater at that point. So that's a little bit sketchy. So a lot of uncertainty. Like right now, this is basically like in waiting mode, like an indefinite, like, waiting to see what's going to happen type mode for most people, especially for me. That's the way I look at it. I'm just waiting for something to happen economically, a big reset or something before I decide to invest in a home, a car, or anything like that.
Man, I remember when the current admin came and everyone said, the Great Reset, it's coming. And then they all threw that away after he said, actually, I want the houses to be more expensive. Oh my God. You remember that? You remember that when he said
Yeah,
that?
I remember that. And also, right now, I mean, look what's happening as a result of that. There's a huge, absolute gluttonous amount of houses on the market for sale. They can't sell them. There's not a market to buy them. They're at these crazy prices. And also, by the way, like, I'm not trying to be a pessimist, but have y'all seen the new builds that are out there? Like these $1 million new home builds? I mean, I'm seeing videos coming out of inspectors, like home inspectors going out to these brand new builds. They're literally brand new $1 million builds. And the faucets are falling out of the wall. The roof's caving in. They didn't frame the thing properly. The foundations are cracked. I mean, the house is basically a lemon, and they're selling them for $1 million, and they're like made of paper. Like the walls are thin. They don't have hardly any insulation in the wall. It's like, what in the world is going on? It's like, that is wild. It's like, then you go buy an older home, and then they're actually falling apart because they're old and it just needs maintenance. But they're also charging crazy rates for those too.
Man, you know what's really sad, like the reality of it, is that there isn't really a lot of good homes to buy out there right now. And that's probably also going to create probably a real estate construction crash, because a lot of these real estate construction companies are building these as their own like basically subdivisions to sell out to people, and no one's going to buy them if they're that bad off, because once they get a home inspector to go look it over, they're going to be like, yeah, you know, there's not even plumbing in this thing, and then they're not going to buy it. And then, like, a lot of these real estate companies are going to be losing humongous investments on the property, the materials, the labor costs, the construction, and then the house itself that they can't even sell because it's that bad of quality.
Yeah, it's rough. Like that's why, I'm like, hell, I don't like renting because I feel like renting is kind of like throwing money down the drain. You're not putting it into an asset, which a house is an asset. So you're not like putting the money in an investment. It's just kind of going out the window. But at the same time, though, I'm like, you go buy one of these new houses and a housing crash happens, all of a sudden you lose a whole bunch of value possibly. And then also the maintenance on it, because they're already falling apart. You got to put a whole bunch of money into maintaining the thing and fixing all the stuff wrong with it that the builder messed up. So it's like, shoot, it's just a strange situation the country finds itself in.
Yeah, I also just saw someone say, given how sparse the population is in Canada, there isn't an actual land shortage contributing to these prices as artificial restrictions due to permits and zoning, plus regulations and taxes. I'll tell you something that actually has led to the housing market becoming insane in the U.S. It's literally just people who bought a house like 30 years ago for like a bag of Cracker Jacks and $50, and for some reason they feel like they deserve to make 100% the profits off of their house when they sell it. Like we've know some people who are like that, to where, they buy like a 30-year-old house at, like, say like $800,000, and the thing is absolutely falling apart. Hardly anything works in it. The plumbing doesn't work. There's roaches and rats up in the building and everything, and none of that's being fixed. But when they go back to sell it like 5 years later, they've done no renovations or fixed anything in it, and then they're demanding 1.6 million for it in the condition that it's in, for no reason. Like, there's no reason to it at all. They just want to make that kind of money off of it. And I don't understand that, because it's like, you'd be pretty lucky to just make what you got it for, in a sell and just break even. Because you haven't even done any renovations to or anything. But now they feel like they deserve a 100% profit off of their house that they bought that they've done nothing to. And a lot of people are kind of like in that mindset, to where, it's just basically maximize profits. And it's really weird. Like, I don't get it, because it's like, you're lucky to even sell it in the current market. And then they want to make a killing, and then they'll literally hold on to it because the rest of the market is also in that mindset, to where everybody who puts their house on the market right now also expects to basically just strike rich even selling a house.
Yeah, really, I would say so. But one thing as well, it's like, when you see these homes and stuff like that, like I occasionally look on Zillow just out of curiosity. Like, I saw yesterday, like, I came across a picture of like a house that kind of looked like a shack a little bit, like it looked like a Lowe's shack that you put like the lawnmowers and stuff in. I was like, oh, that must be like a reasonable one. It's like 250,000. I was like, what? It's like 250,000 for the Lowe's shack. Come on, you can't charge 250K for a Lowe's shack. But they're charging that now, and it's like, it's like, are we really going to pay that kind of money for it? I mean, I'm sure there's somebody out there that'll pay it, but it's not none of these houses are worth that. It's in crazy prices, and COVID is what started it.
Yeah, also Bombrick says, so that's the seller's fault? You sell what you can get. Well, yeah, but if they're all putting it up because they say, oh, well, all the comps are, like $5 million for a 2,000 square foot house, so I'm also going to put mine at $5 million. Yeah, that's the seller's fault. Like, because at that point, everyone's just playing the game of how can we hyperinflate the value with each other in our neighborhood. They're never going to sell it. I mean, none of these people these days are selling their houses at these prices. That's why that's why there's this whole balloon going on where there's so many houses on the market and none of them are being sold. It's because all these people are going, oh, well, it's not my fault that the property values are high around here, so I'm also going to put that up way up there in that category as well. And and it's like, come on, be realistic. Because it's not like when you put your house on the market, you're forced to try and rip people off. You can sell it at a reasonable price. Because you're the homeowner, you could sell your house at whatever price you want, but instead everyone goes, no, I want to strike it rich too, and then they put it up at 2 million as well because everyone else has theirs at 2 million and none of them are selling for 3 years or so, and they've been on the market all that time.
I'd say it's a dumb logic. It's like it's you're not gaining anything really, because when you leave your house, when you sell it, you're going to have to go buy another one. It's like you can't just sell your house and have nowhere to live. It's like you got to buy another one. So when they sell their house at this inflated price, then they have to go buy another house at an inflated price, just like they sold theirs for. So they're really not gaining anything because you can't just take the money and keep it. You got to put it in a new house. So unless somebody's downsizing significantly, that money's not going to be had.
Yeah, that's also honestly, man, it's just kind of like a wealth transfer. Basically, it's like if you want to get into the clique now that owns houses, you have to put a whole bunch of money up front to me and basically let me strike it rich, and then you can own this absurdly priced house. And then when you eventually go to sell it, you actually will break even or lose money on it. But I'm going to make a killing in the meantime when I sold it to you. That's basically the mindset that the housing market's in right now, and it won't work. No one's going I can tell you something. I am never buying a house and putting a mortgage on anything until the prices go down, because the housing crash is going to come around at some point in the future because of how the market is existing right now, and I'm not going to lose my shirt having a house that's now like 600,000 less or so than what it was, just to get like a literal like a shotgun house these days. It's going to be like 1.6 million. It's going to go down to 800,000 again. And then you're stuck paying a mortgage for a $1.6 million shotgun house. It's like, I'm not doing that. That's just absurd. Like those people are just basically going to sit on the houses until the market implodes and then they have to sell it for what it's actually worth or less. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from John Bove, and thank you, John, for that support. He said, for Costco chickens to share with the thumbnail focus group and Google the moose turd pie story. What?
What? The what? Let me pull it up. Let's see. Oh, it's a vulgar joke. So I can't read it on air. I can't read it on there. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, John Bovey. And I gotta say, thank you so much for the Costco chickens. And also, I thank you so much for helping this channel to keep running and really caring about that thumbnail focus group. Because the thumbnail focus group always comes back with good reports. I actually have 2 groups. One group has 3 people in it for most of the time, sometimes 2. And then there's another focus group that usually has 5 people in it. And sometimes I run it by both of them, or I just run it by one group or the other, depending on which one's actually active and free to go vote on something. But it's really interesting. Like it's become very I hate to say this because we're not a corporate channel, but I feel like it's become very corporate on thumbnails. Like having all of these different iterations that are never used each day, having to go and run them by focus groups. It's very much becoming corporate to try and get these thumbnails done. But a big thanks to your support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 14 from Chris Alexander, and thank you, Chris, for that $14 support. He said, Iran big L and LSA big W.
And I'd agree, Chris. And a big thanks to your support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 12 from Maxwell Conan, and thank you, Max, as well. He said, Genie the Pooh led previously sanctioned Rubio into China by changing the character of his Chinese surname from Lu to Lu. And so Lu is still banned, but Lu is not. Problem solved. LSA.
Really? That's interesting right there. But a big thanks to your support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Robert Betancourt once again. And Robert said, is Ukraine using first green defense skid loader? I haven't seen them personally. If they're using them, I haven't seen them. But I think Ukraine does have a couple of those like tactical skid loaders, like a couple of them. But the wild part is the U.S. police departments have more advanced, tactical armored skid loaders than even Ukraine has, and they're a country at war. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, the police budgets in this country know no bounds. Like they really don't anymore. But a big thanks to your support and helping the channel keep running. I wouldn't know about that, actually, but I do know that they've used some skid steers from time to time, but nowhere close to the front. But a big thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well. And also I saw Erling Grull say I'd never live where an HOA was. I tell you this, coming from Alabama, I would not live anywhere without an HOA because when we were growing up, we lived in the woods and there was no HOA out there in the woods. And the place was like the Wild West. Like it truly was. Like as far as like what people would do. Like there was literally one guy who just came out with his family and they like Amished a house. Like I'm no joke, they literally just built it. It was like a little shack thing that they built. And because there was no HOA, they could just do that. And it's like, what the hell is this? It's like, that doesn't like, and there was like no grass around it, and it was literally just on a dirt plot. You remember that house, don't you, Matthew?
Yeah, I remember it generally. I will say this though, HOAs are plagues. Like they really are because
they are.
the people that get into those and become like board members at HOAs, they're usually honestly like just saying it without any sugarcoating. They're usually jackasses for the most part. They're like the kids in school that never had any like power over anybody. So then they got into HOA.
They got hall monitor syndrome.
Yeah, and then they started like wanting to get power over people. Then it started getting stupid about there's something like a little millimeter too high on the blade of grass or something like that. And then they hit you with a fine. I like rules, but I don't like stupidity either. And HOAs start getting into stupidity. And then also you got to pay the dues as well. And these days, like for example, in Utah, like the average HOA fee around here is like $300 or $400 a month. I'm like, that's crazy. That's like, health insurance cost or something and HOA fees on top of your mortgage.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, still at the same time, like it's kind of like a double-edged sword thing because they do suck, like in that degree, like the people who are in HOAs. But also, without an HOA, we know what that was like growing up. It was basically like anarchy out there. Like in anything that wasn't like illegal, like it would be done. Like there was one guy who, let me think, what did he do? Oh yeah, he literally had a whole bunch of sand brought in, and had them just dump this sand. It was like a 40-foot tall hill, and he built his house on top of this sand hill. And it like started coming apart, of course, because it's made of sand. It's not really a sound like thing to build on top of. You remember that one, Matthew, too? Like where that guy's house basically like split and it had to be abandoned.
Yeah, I think he opened a mine just to get the sand for it.
Yeah, I think like it had to have been because it was so much freaking sand. Like there was so much stupid stuff that happened where we basically grew up with houses and stuff. Like I definitely see what HOAs are for, but then when you also live in an HOA, you absolutely hate the HOA. There's really no comfortable medium because you either live in the absolute Wild West without an HOA, or you live in the damn Stasi or the Gestapo with an HOA. So it's you just kind of had to pick your poison on that one, unfortunately. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Music Uploader, and thank you very much, Music Uploader, for that 10. They said, this is not a complicated situation. Bukele can help us. Send all those 40,000 MS-13 folks over to the islands. If you make it out alive, then you're free. Saves El Salvador money, too. Now, that sounds like a bad idea. Those folks are rather nasty individuals, very, very brutal. I'm not sure if that would work, but it's an interesting idea, though. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, Music Uploader drops all of them off on the island. Get to work! And then, like, it stops as, like, a storybook page, and then says, and thus, Music Uploader created the perfect haven for the Somali pirates' capital, and they created Pirate Land on this island. It's like, I don't know, like, a whole bunch of hardened criminals getting put out on an island in the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know if that will work, like, being honest. And also, that's if there's any of them left. I mean, like, there is that weird blood-looking streak coming from that one shack near Sekot right now that nobody can really explain, that clearly looks like blood. So, there might not even be a lot of them left, not trying to joke around about that, actually kind of a little bit morbid. Let me see, here we go. Here it is. This shack right here, it doesn't show this on Google, but there's been some recent satellite photographs that were taken in the midst of last year that were showing that this shack right here started to have this odd-looking blood red streak just flowing out of it like a stream. And so there were some people back then that were saying it might be some sort of like an execution shack or something where they bring them in there and execute some of them because, it's getting over capacity from what we hear. But who's to say? Maybe, maybe not. But a big thanks to your support and help this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Music Uploader who said, off topic, but gotta ask, what's your take on Helen of Troy turning into Helen of Detroit, LSA?
I'd have to declare ignorance on that one. I don't know what that's in reference to, actually. But a big thanks to you for your support, and we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from I Will Eat Your Hot Dogs. And thank you for that support, by the way. He said, sir, please send me a hot dog. Oh, we love that. Yummy hot dogs. They go woof woof. I bet enforcers. And Matt loves hot dogs. No, I don't like glizzies. I don't like glizzies.
Rest in peace to Granny. She got eaten up by a glizzy. But beyond that, I gotta thank you greatly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. To be honest with you, I don't really like hot dogs. I like hamburgers. I love hamburgers. They're so good. They're so great. Gobble them up like a delicious hamburger. So good. I love McDonald's. But beyond that, I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Maxwell Conan once again. He said, please refer to the Russian missile clown car as the Blyatmobile.
Honestly, that's a pretty good name. We've used that before for a lot of Russian Ladas that got blown up in Ukraine, but we could use that for the Sarmat car as well. So a huge thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that well. And I see that some people are talking about that one of the last super chats was about some movie. I don't know about that one. I don't even know what the reference to that one was. But have y'all heard about that new animal farm that came out? Have you heard about that one, Matthew?
No.
So there was a new animal farm that came out, like from the book Animal Farm. Did you read that in school?
No, I didn't read that in school.
Okay, I think you and me read 1984, but I read Animal Farm outside of high school at a point in college because it was a part of some class for some, I forgot what class it even was, but I had to read it, and it was a pretty good book. I found it interesting. But apparently, Matthew, they made an animated version of the movie, and it's basically 1984 but with animals, basically. And you know who in the world Napoleon was in the movie that they made, which is supposed to be like the equivalent of Stalin in animal form?
Nicolas Cage.
Seth Rogen.
Oh.
Yeah, he was literally doing the laugh and stuff too. And they, instead of making the movie anti-Stalinist, they made it anti-capitalist, which completely misses the whole point of the actual book, which is supposed to be, a socialist revolution. You need to be careful of that because it might get taken over by ne'er-do-well people that end up abusing the situation to take power for themselves. It went from that to capitalism was like bad, dude. I was like, bro, this is a dumbass movie. Like, it was so stupid, I couldn't believe it. Do not, by the way, folks, don't even hate watch that show. Let that thing die in silence. It's a horrendous show. It's so bad, it's perverted everything about the original source material so badly, it's not even worth looking into that much. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Nexus, and Nexus said, thanks for telling it like it is. You guys say what people need to hear instead of what they want to hear. That's rare these days and much appreciated in LSA.
And I gotta thank you so much for the support and appreciating that about this channel, Nexus, because I try my best. I really do. And so a big thanks to you once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from the Socadelic, and they said, late to the chat, fellas, but wanted to send some positive Einsteinian spooky action at a distance vibes to you fine gents. Onward and upward in LSA.
And I gotta say, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have another 10 from Crispy, and thank you, Crispy, once again for that support, and we do appreciate it. We also have a 5 from Kiranovsky. He said, hey, Enforcers, sorry it's so little. And also, by the way, we appreciate all support, by the way. He said, you deserve a lot more for the work you do, but thank you for the legendary streams from the UK.
And thank you so much for the support, Kiranovsky, and thank you so much for the kind words as well, and helping us to keep this thing running all the way from the United Kingdom. Before we move on to the next one, though, I just saw someone say that Animal Farm was anti-fascist. I mean, you could say that, but generally it was more so anti-Stalinist. Because if you look at the book and also listen to what Orwell said about it, Orwell said specifically that the book was based on the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, the rise of and death of Lenin, and then the rise of Stalin. And that's why Snowball was killed in the book, because Snowball was the pig version of Trotsky. And so Napoleon, who's Stalin in pig form, had Trotsky killed, who was Snowball. So that's actually what it's exactly based off of. So because Orwell actually was a socialist, so he's in support of socialism, but he's not in support of authoritarian communism like started to exist in the Soviet Union with the rise of Stalin. Although Lenin was also not a saint either; he was a bastard. But anyways, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Truck and Chef, who puts in a 5. He said, like bombing the water with our bombers.
You know, it's an idea. It is an idea. And a big thanks to you for supporting all the channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Miss Paula Thomas, who said, why haven't the Iranians quietly done their nuclear power program and used the plutonium output by power stations to make their munitions?
Well, that's a good question. And at the moment we would not know about exactly why, but I do thank you for the great question. Unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance on that one because I haven't looked at that angle at the moment. But a big thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
Let's have a 5 from Ulf Hednar, and thank you very much for that support once again. And basically, to abridge it a little bit here, they said basically they're unhappy with the current foreign policy.
I would agree quite a lot with that, Ulf Hednar. And so a big thanks to you for support and help this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Slinger, who said, time for a watch of Team America World Police.
I don't know what show that is, actually, but I do thank you for his support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Brian Gonzalez. He said, wow, rare Northcom name drop. What about Cybercom?
Oh, we don't talk about Cybercom. We also don't talk about SOCOM a lot on here, which is Special Operations Command. Those are some that get completely just buried because nobody ever talks about them. But Cybercom is pretty cool. I actually know some people who are under Cybercom's command, which is pretty neat. But yeah, Northcom never gets mentioned on this channel because it's just basically the United States, Canada, and Mexico, which is basically all that's in Northcom. But a big thanks to you for your support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Ian Mitson. He said, him speaking of what's treason at this point is like the thief yelling, get the thief. It's projecting. Very infuriating.
Perhaps. Oh, hey, maybe. I see what you're getting at there. But a big thanks to your support. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Crackerjack, who said, the president just announced an attack in Africa.
That's true, and apparently we ended up killing Dookie down there in Nigeria. But a big thanks to your support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from GS Ghost, who said, aren't SEALs literally trained for this? Bud's basic underwater demolition school, or am I missing something?
Now, I don't really think they're generally trained for demining. I think they're trained for, like, in-port operations and such things as that. But demining, I don't really think would be within the SEALs' line of work. Because if you try and detonate a mine, even at a distance underwater, the hydraulic force could end up causing them a great deal of internal trauma. So I don't really think that would be within their purview. But I might be wrong, because I don't know if the SEALs particularly train for things like demining and whatnot. But a big thanks to you for your support, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a super chat from Plazoth, who put in a 2, and a big shout out to Plazoth for that support, and also a big shout out to Kuri and Neon for that $1 support. And we appreciate all 3 of you very much for supporting the channel. And with that, folks, once again, that is all of our super chats right there. It's now time to move on to our live chat questions and our Morse code decoders. And a huge shout out to all of our super chatters once again for helping to keep the channel running. And now let's see what the folks in the live chat were saying. But first of all, let's grab the Morse code decoders. Tonight we had Paul, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Heroic Fluffiness, Kush, Kovateric, Sire, and Brian, and they said the Morse code says, Russia trying to get people out of there. There's something afoot. LLT, LSA.
And that is the sound of money. Y'all got the den on the nail. That is Morse code message of the night. And I got to congratulate y'all greatly on getting that correct time and time again, because y'all are always showing that the Lead Springer Reciprocal Corps knows exactly what's up in that Morse code message and lets the entirety of the LSA know. So a huge congrats to y'all once again. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to Ryan, who said, I'd love to know if the enforcers have an opinion on when the weather will be used as a weapon. I think they use the weather right now as a weapon. Not with the like whole harp thing that everybody always talks about. They're always like, "Oh, that harp, it's like doing something to the wind or something." I don't know what they say about that. It's like a whole conspiracy theory around it. But they probably do stuff to probably try to mess with it a little bit. But it's probably not as deep as people think with the conspiracy theories and stuff like that. They do use cloud seeding for stuff like agricultural use and stuff like that. That's a commercial use for it. But I would be surprised if they hadn't at least looked into that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I don't know if they're ever going to use the weather directly as a weapon. This would just be really hard to try and find a way to actually utilize weather as a weapon. Like, say, against a country like Iran, there's really not a lot of rainstorms there. There's not a lot of tornadoes, for that matter, as a result. And really no weather elements to speak of, for that matter, over Iran, except for the wind. And
Earthquakes.
well, yeah, but that's not really a weather thing. That's more of a geological thing. Like you don't have like intermittent earthquakes with a slight chance of rain. You have like the cloudy skies with a
I
slight
was just
chance of
thinking.
rain.
I was just thinking of like an environmental event, like something like that, like weather, something like that's why I was. That's the way I took his question. I mean, or you could cause earthquakes. I mean, you could try to cause hurricanes. Of course, I don't know if that's even possible scientifically. I'm not a scientist that studies stuff like that. But yeah, I would be surprised though. I mean, if we're thinking about it, I'm sure that someone's explored the idea at some point, but it's unclear if they've ever had success with it.
I'd say they probably didn't have success with it because if they had any way to control the weather, why in the world would they let, tornadoes rip through the U.S. and hurricanes rip through and create billions of dollars in damage when we could actually manipulate them when they form and make them go do something that's far less destructive or not even hit the United States, and yet they keep letting them hit. And some people might say, well, that's because, like they don't want people to know about it. But it's like, yeah, but at the same time though, like all the hurricanes that we've had in the Gulf over the past 10 years have caused way more damage than any other weather element we've seen affect any of our enemies. Outside of like a typhoon in East Asia. So, it's like if we had it, why in the world are we hardly using it against any of them? And yet we keep getting slammed by hurricanes every few months in the Gulf, and it costs us billions of dollars of damage every time. And so that's why I'm thinking that I don't really think we have any weather weapons. Like, cloud seeding is something that we definitely do, but I think that's more so just for agricultural purposes because, making it rain on someone in a war isn't really going to do a whole lot to them. It's going to make them a little uncomfortable, and some of them might get immersion foot, but not more than that.
It could delay an attack. Like for example, if you somehow caused like a major weather event to happen, like a major rainstorm, that could delay an attack possibly that an enemy was about to conduct. Because down in Venezuela, there was like a hurricane that came through, it delayed the entire operation down there in Venezuela before they launched it.
Yeah, that's true, actually. That is true. That is a point. Yeah, that actually is a point. So I don't know. Maybe we are using it as a weapon right now, just rainstorms and whatnot. And I also just saw someone say cloud seeding was banned. Was it? I haven't heard of that. I thought it was still
No,
something that was
no.
done.
They still do it. Like they put, I think it's like silver iodide or iodine or something like that into the atmosphere, and it causes the clouds to be seeded, causes some type of rain to fall or something. I think it still happens.
The first. Did you hear about the first time that was ever done, like in America? Which was the first time it was ever done in the world. Have you ever heard the story of that?
That was during MK Ultra, wasn't it?
No, no, that was way back in the day in like the 1920s. And in California, they were having a local drought, and this town paid this guy, who everyone thought at the time was a snake oil salesman. He was like, "Yes, I have these little rockets I can shoot off, and they'll create rain." And they were like, "That sounds kind of bullshit, but we're desperate, so we'll pay the guy to see if it works." So he shot off his rockets, and I think something like 2 or 3 days passed and it didn't rain, so they thought the guy was a lying bastard. So they paid him his money and then told him, "If you ever show up in this town again, we're going to hang you." And so then he left, and then on the fourth day, the town literally got flooded, like flash flooded from a rainstorm. And so then it was like, wait a minute, I think that guy actually has something going on here. And it turns out he did. Like, he actually did. And I think that was the first cloud seeding that was ever confirmed to have been done anywhere in the world.
That is interesting. I have no clue how that guy came up with that, but he was a lucky bastard.
I think it truly was just lucky with that, because I don't really think the guy was a chemist or anything or had any real training or knowledge in that subject. But somehow he actually ended up, I think, doing the first cloud seeding, if I remember right. But anyways, with that, I hope we've addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Snowy, who said, is it logical to assume that China would tell Iran to reopen the Strait because China gets 60% of its oil from this region?
Not necessarily, because China might be a little bit more secure in oil supplies than we are, and might also be a lot more protectionist about exporting their strategic reserves at the moment, meaning that they might be able to outlast us longer and therefore not put a lot of pressure on Iran to reopen the Strait and kind of just wait the whole thing out and watch the U.S. fold. That might be what they're trying to do, because China is certainly not going to do anything if they don't have to that's going to benefit the United States, because the United States is a natural enemy of the People's Republic of China. So I hope that does address that.
Well, truthfully, we don't even know if China's been cut off for the Strait of Hormuz being blockaded. We don't even really know that, because I've seen some evidence which might suggest that the Iranian oil tankers are doing what's known as ship-to-ship transfers at the northern part of the Strait of Hormuz. It looks like they might be transferring the oil to Gulf-aligned states tankers, and then they're getting through the blockade, because just so everybody knows, those vessels are allowed through the U.S. blockade. So those are getting out. There are still vessels getting out of the Strait. It's just not the ones that are aligned with Iran. So I've seen some evidence that seems to suggest they're doing ship-to-ship transfers, and China's still getting their oil, which would defeat the entire purpose of the blockade to a large degree. So, I mean, that hasn't really broken the headlines yet, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that in the next week or so.
Yeah, that might be the case. So it might not be affecting them too greatly. Regardless, I think Matthew and me would agree, regardless of whatever opinions are, that the Chinese are generally going to try and wait this out somehow and watch the U.S. fold. Because watching the U.S. fold and basically be humiliated would be well within China's interest. Doing anything to our reprieve would not be in their interest. So I hope that has addressed it the best we can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to put in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be none other than Dapper Dragon, who said, "Why do we have a front line for Taiwan? And is China going to invade Taiwan?"
Why do we have a front? Oh, well, we have a front line for Taiwan. I actually don't know what that question means. Because as far as a front line, that would suggest that there's active fighting, and that's the point of a clash. We don't have one of those at the moment. I think if you're talking about the island defense chain line that I have, and that's to show where our defensive line would be if a war broke out in terms of the naval and air conflict that would be involved. And as far as a war happening soon, I wouldn't say that it would be happening this year. I have a feeling that generally our most likely window of an invasion of Taiwan is going to be between 2027 up till about 2032. And that will probably be our highest peak of a chance of the Chinese invading Taiwan. So I hope that does address that question the best I can, if that was what it was about, because I think the frontline question kind of confused me, because I was like, frontline? I think you're talking about the defensive line here. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we've reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many of y'all have been here over the course of this stream and have been watching. We're entirely honored and greatly appreciative of so many of y'all watching the stream over the course of the night. At the peak, we had about 16,000 people here, and 110,000 people have watched this show before it ended. I've got to say once again, a humongous thanks to everyone who has watched tonight, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world, and if there is a short video to be made, I'll be the one making it. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Heram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, a big shout out to everybody for joining us once again, and we will see you tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern on the next Nightly War News stream at our usual time at 10 p.m. Eastern, and maybe on a short war video tomorrow if there is enough news to cover. Of course, tonight was the first Red Alert night. It was a Friday going into the weekend, so maybe something will happen this weekend. We'll have to see, though. I feel like we said that last weekend, too, but now the Beijing meeting's over, so that was the big crux that we were waiting for. So we'll have to wait and see. But in the meantime, though, we'll be on a high alert, looking out for that, and we'll see you all tomorrow. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Heroes Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Go to